afternoon and welcome to the 9th Annual Wayne Economic Forum. We are thrilled to be hosting the event again this year. On behalf of the Wooster Area Chamber of Commerce staff and board of directors, I would like to thank each of you in attendance today for your support of what promises to be a very enlightening afternoon. Since its inception, the Chamber has been blessed with strong support of the event, and this year is no exception. With a long list of generous sponsors that include Freeman Building Systems, Gojo Industries, Kitty Poo Club, MAI Capital Management, Meaden & Moore, One Digital, Pilata Ford Lincoln, PNC Financial Services Group, RDM Equipment Company, Seaman Corporation, Stiefel Adams Reichert Wealth Management Group, the Wooster Brush Company, United Titanium, Wayne Savings Community Bank, Westfield Bank, and CW Production and Design, who is also covering the event production this afternoon. Let's give each of these forum supporters a round of applause. I would also be remiss if I did not give a special thank you to the forum's founder, Mr. D. Vadia, for his leadership in not only the creation of the forum, but also him leading the charge in faithfully securing our slate of speakers over the years. Thanks again, Dee. Before we get started this afternoon, I would like to address a couple of housekeeping items. First, located at the center of each table are questionnaire sheets. These are to be used if you have a question you would like to ask one of our presenters. When you have a prepared question, please submit it to one of the chamber staff who will be making their way around the room during the Q&A sessions. Also, our schedule calls for 4 brief breaks, which are noted in your program. During these breaks, we encourage you to socialize and enjoy the snacks and beverages at the back of the room. Also note that we will offer bar service beginning at the 3rd break, which will be located in the lobby. At this time, I would like to invite Dr. Sharon Mark Anthony from Bloomington Women's Care to the podium to introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Samira. Hello, everyone. Woo, that's loud. Okay. Well, I'm going to take it down a notch because obviously I don't need that much energy. But I'm so excited to be here today. This is my first Wayne Economic Forum. I've been in town 10 years, but it is my pleasure being part of the chamber. I get to introduce our first speaker. This is Marcy Merriman. She is the managing director for EY. She's an internationally recognized leader in cultural anthropology, brand strategy, and having her work featured on places such as CNBC, BBC, Bloomberg, and in publications such as the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Forbes. She's also been a frequent keynote speaker at top global forums, including Dubai's Global Islamic Economic Summit, Forbes CMO Summit, and Ernst & Young's Strategic Growth Forum, and was named one of the top 25 consultants in 2019 listing by Consulting Magazines, which recognized her for her excellence in leadership. Overall, Marcy has spent 25 years working with various companies such as Nike, Toyota, United Health Group, Mars, Pepsi, and Royal Caribbean to anticipate disruption and to propel growth through human-centric strategies. Her passion, though, lies in connecting the dots between human needs, market influencers, and business requirements to enable business innovation and growth. She is essentially focused on leveraging her experience and an intimate knowledge of millennials and Gen Z to help clients differentiate their businesses and to tap growth opportunities with these complex and ever-changing cohorts. Within EY, Marcy leads a practice focused on helping organizations understand the nuances of human behaviors and the organizational implications that can be addressed through improved experiences, including the deployment of digital technologies. So she focuses on understanding how social, economic, and political changes and new technologies are changing who we are as human beings, our beliefs, our values, our behaviors, the things that drive our expectations in everyday life and our aspirations for our future. She teams with her clients to find answers to the question, like, so what? What do customers really want, and how can businesses better facilitate those needs? So what can organizations do to help employees be more effective at engaging customers? How can digital technologies be better used for consumer benefit? How will consumer behavior continue to evolve? And what can companies do to get ready for these changes today? According to her daughter, she's obsessed with fixing things and tackling all the problems that need to be solved and the issues that need to be addressed so that companies can provide their customers with the experiences that they deserve and that they truly desire. So prior to joining EY, Marcy was an executive in both L Brands and Toys R Us, as well as a successful entrepreneur. First as a global partner in global retailing design firm Big Red Wooster, and then as a founder of experience strategy firm Primal Growth. But overall, Marcy, finally her history was she holds an executive MBA from Case Western Reserve University with a focus on marketing strategy. And she earned a BA in social sciences from Michigan State, where she focused on her studies on anthropology, sociology, and Asian studies. She also completed Harvard Business School's Board of Director program and is a member of Women Execs on Boards. So without further ado, Marcy Merriman.
Introduction I think I've ever had, and I was scared to death of what you were going to come up with next. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thrilled to be here with you today. At EY, I get to work with boards, CEOs, and their teams to help them anticipate the future, to really gain a vision for where the world is going, where people are going, where society's going, but most importantly often to them, where their customers and their employees are going, what they're going to want next. And I help them gain this vision of where it's going and what they're going to want by looking at their customers and their employees as human beings. Looking at all aspects of their life. Certainly things like how they shop or where they want to work. That's the big question now. How does people want to work? Where they want to work. But going deeper than that, to look at the things that really drive them, that push them forward, that motivate them in their day-to-day life. Try to move this a little bit. So I found in my work that a lot of companies are really worried. And it actually tends to be the best companies that worry the most. Because they're the ones that get that politics, economics, new technologies, all of these things are morphing human behavior at warp speed. Keeping up, staying relevant really is a constant battle. So I use my background in cultural anthropology to recognize those nuances of change within societies that can lead to big changes. But of course, as a business strategist, I'm trained to look for the money, right? To find those little pockets of underleveraged value that when understood in the right context can lead to big growth. So I use both these perspectives to help them make sense of it all, to understand how and why people are changing, to see the risk, but also see the huge opportunities in these changes so that they can get ahead of the curve, so that they can beat the competition. I'm excited to be here today with you to share a little bit about a group of people that is driving massive change across our society today. Gen Z. They're today's 15 to 25-year-olds who are radically different than millennials, and in fact different from any generation ever before. But you really wouldn't know that by looking at the headlines. Don't fall for the clickbait. This looks like another millennial story. The tagline, the stereotypes, the things that millennials were kind of tied up with. They're doing the same thing with Gen Z, and it's on steroids, a little bit bigger than what we even saw with millennials. We need to go deeper need to look at what a generation is so that we don't fall for these things. So first, what a generation's not. It's not an arbitrary number or group of people that change every 10, 15, 20 years. A generation is a group of people who form a kinship based upon change events in the society that they grew up in, that changed the society, that changed the way of thinking, that changed the baseline expectation of how things should work. For people in their formative years, these changes form a common baseline that they take through life. Now, it doesn't mean that they adhere to all these, or they believe in these changes, or these new social norms, but it does create a baseline expectation of what's right or what's wrong, how we should think about things going forward, the new set of social norms. And these young people have experienced more change in their brief years than most generations see in a lifetime. I mean, consider this. The oldest of them was just 2 when the Columbine massacre happened. For them, school's never been a safe haven. It's always been a place of metal detectors and lockdown drills. The oldest had just started kindergarten when 9/11. So for them, terrorism, war, or at least the threat of it, is a constant concern. It's always in their mind. And I was in college when we declared war in Desert Storm. And I remember on my way to a night class, hearing it on the radio on my way there and just being in shock. Because I never thought that I would see the US at war. For them, that type of safety, that type of security is completely unknown. They couldn't even get out of grade school before they experienced the collapse of global financial markets, bringing with it the highest unemployment and the Great Recession we all came to know. And lucky Gen Z, experiencing a black swan event unknown to the past living generations, a global pandemic. Not only has Gen Z experienced more change, they've had to digest it faster and more completely because of this. The iPhone, launched before the youngest of them was even born. So why should you care? Why should these 15 to 25-year-olds matter to you? Well, if not already your customers or your employees, they soon will be. But more importantly than that, the youth within our societies have always been the drivers of change. So whether it's around fashion, music, new technologies, social and cultural change, it's always been the youth that have propelled us forward and taught us all to dream big. In that regard, Gen Z is not any different than past generations. We saw with baby boomers questioning of the establishment. Millennials brought new concerns and awareness for environmental factors, how we work, flexibility in work, open work environments, working with purpose. It was millennials that drove this. But in our research, guess who appreciates it the most? Who says that they place the highest value on flexibility? It's the baby boomers. Baby boomers and Gen X, and I was in the workforce, millennials came in and we were all complaining about them, but we all appreciate it now. We like the things that they demanded and brought into our social norm. Where Gen Z is different from these past generations is in their ability to connect instantly and disseminate information globally, impacting us all at a faster and faster rate. So what is it going to take to live up to their high expectations, which will soon become the standards for us all? I'm going to share 3 themes that we continuously see in our research as a way of beginning to understand this generation more and the changes they're ushering in. First, need to embrace their expectations for speed, ease, simplicity. They're said to have a 7-second attention span, which is down 1 second from millennials' 8 seconds, but I don't believe it. I see them focus. They can focus in when it's something of interest, when it's important. I think of it as a 7-second BS meter. They can tell really quickly whether something's relevant to them, whether it's going to be a hassle, whether it's a challenge, whether they just need to move on to something else. Now, it's said that our experiences with technology in our youth form our expectations for it for life. With that, look at the 4 generations and asked, does technology make your life easier? Now, you might think Gen Z would be the ones that say, yeah, technology is really important. It's Gen X, my generation that gets no credit for anything, usually not even recognized. We're the ones that say, yeah, technology makes life a lot better. But that makes sense. I mean, show of hands, how many of you in here ever typed a paper on a typewriter and had to look for whiteout to get the paper done for the next morning? Or dropped film off to have it developed? Right? How about stopping at a gas station for a map or directions? Right? Yeah, we're the generation that marvels at how much easier life is with technology. So much so, when things don't work, when we have password resets, when we can't get through checkouts, whether it's online or in person, when we have these problems, we work through it. We try to make it work. In fact, what we often think is it's our fault, that we're doing something wrong. Why can't we make it work? Gen Z knows it's not the user, it's the design. Technology has been integrated into their lifeblood since birth. Every aspect of their life, how they work, how they play, meeting friends, education, all of these areas, and they're continuing to expect this, and they're continuing to expect the same ease as they move into other life stages, like buying a house, getting married, getting a job. They're expecting the same ease and simplicity as they move into these areas. It's companies like these that are forming their expectations, constantly innovating against Gen Z's need and expectation for speed, ease, simplicity, on a daily basis, looking at how they can make their customers' lives a little bit easier. But when we step back and look at our workforce, it's a bit of a different story. There's a massive gap between what Gen Zs come to experience as consumers and what they're getting as they're entering the work world en masse. It's like hitting a brick wall. So why does this matter? Speed and simplicity are simply the new baseline. As Gen Z comes into the workforce and we wonder why they're not adapting, why they're not able to do well, why they're quitting or quiet quitting, why these things are happening, a lot of it is because of this brick wall. It's because of the challenges. What happens when you lose electricity at home? Do you go about everything normally and just work around it, light candles? It screws up your life, right? I can't get out of my garage when my electricity goes out. This generation, when things don't work, when digital doesn't work, when it's not simple, it's not a matter of being entitled, it's just the only world that they know. The second is authenticity. So after an era of fake news and posed filtered photos with everyone projecting their perfect lives, Gen Z is getting real. They're really ushering us into an era of radical transparency. And they're leading with once taboo topics as a way of conveying who they are, as a way of challenging the status quo. And they've grown up in a more progressive world, and this is showing up in their own personal views. And one stat says less than half of them consider themselves to be completely heterosexual. Now, this stat itself doesn't surprise me much. I mean, I honestly think if millennials or Gen X, if we had been able to be honest or felt compelled to be honest when we were at a similar age, the stat probably would have been similar. What I'm surprised by is how transparent they are with information, how openly they talk about these things. Maybe not always with their parents, but certainly with their friends, with their peers, with their schoolmates. So whether it's around gender, sexuality, mental health, financial matters, they're living much more open lives. They're bringing these things, these areas that we've been afraid to talk about in the past, into our daily life, into our policies, into our practices, into our marketing, all aspects of the business. This is the most diverse generation to date in the US. Certainly demographically, but also psychographically, in their attitudes, in their motivations, and their beliefs. A lot of these are the top line things we're seeing, the societal changes, but we also see nuances within them, certainly. but they don't feel compelled to mesh into past standards. And with this, we're getting authenticity as what they say is the most important attribute. The thing that's most important is to be true to yourself. And true to yourself does not mean, I don't like to wake up in the morning. I like to sleep till 11, so that's authentically me, so I'll come into work at noon. That's not what they're talking about. It's around who they are as an individual, what they bring to the table, and being valued for it. I mean, I have been in the professional world as a single mom for the past 15 years. Now, that's not normal in my business, and a lot of people in my business have hidden that in the past. I'm fortunate that I've always had clients and companies that instead embraced it, that saw it as an ability to see things differently, bring a different value to the table. This is the type of authenticity that we're talking about. And they're not just more diverse, they're more inclusive too. Their concern is everyone being treated equal and being treated well and allowing to be their own authentic selves. They don't feel like they can do it until others are free to do it as well. And this is showing up in what stresses them out. So we did a study that we published in January 2020, so officially pre-COVID. And then we did it again in late 2021, and we're getting ready to do our third one right now, to look at this generation, who they are, the differences between them, but also the values and how they're changing. One of the big things we saw change pre-COVID to mid-COVID was the importance of paying for college. There's stress about being able to pay for college or to get a good job. But the thing that stressed them out the most, and the thing that we saw with the biggest climb, was around concern for others being treated badly for who they are, for their basic being. So Gen Z has found their voice on the main stage, and the future will not be quiet. They're taking control of some of the country's biggest social movements. They're doing this as a way of trying to take control back of their own lives, of the society they live in, and also to bring more to others. And across the generation, racism, climate change, gun violence, abuse and addiction, these are all top concerns. And we asked the question, also asking them if they consider themselves liberal, moderate, or conservative. We wanted to understand, do these things factor in? And they don't. These aren't political issues to this generation. These are human issues. They're bringing these values into their work. And this is where it's important for us to understand it's not just what they're demanding, it's who they are. Over 63% said that it's important that they work for employers that share their values, that have similar views on the world. Now, we're going to look a little bit more in a second at work, but this is one of their top concerns. And why this matters: authenticity, showing your values, and being true to it is a basis for trust. One of the ways I saw this come through, and I still to this day love thinking about, is in the spring of this past year, talking with a college student in New York who was interviewing for an internship with a gaming company. She's a gaming major. As you can imagine, gaming majors are in big demand. So she had a day of interviews, super excited, one of the best companies to work for, on and on and on. Her last interview was with the CMO. End of the day, talked to her, how'd it go? What do you think? Wow, it's a great company. They offered me the job, way more money than I, ever thought I'd get. I can work from anywhere, but I don't think I'm gonna take it. Why is she not gonna take it? Well, the CMO, he's not a gamer. To her, that was a red flag. Another red flag, he was a zoology major in college and he doesn't have a pet. They dig deep for information, they're looking, they're skeptical, they're questioning whether they can trust. Here's another example of the transparency that we're gonna see going forward. Whole Foods, shortly after they launched, their founder, John Mackey, decided to have an open policy about salaries, about information. So every employee in the company, from a bagger up to the CEO, has access to the information to see how much everyone makes. And it's not just how much everyone by level or title, it's by person. How much Joe Smith makes, how much, Bill T makes. And the reason he did this is he thought that it was important for people to understand what was valued. If they could see what people were paid, they could see what was valued. If they could see how much people got in increases, they could see what was valued. It was this transparency. And we're seeing this same level of transparency and expectations come in with Gen Z. We talked about their openness around gender, around mental health. They're also open with finances. They're sharing these details with one another as they're looking at jobs, as they're negotiating jobs, as they're accepting them, once they're in roles. And they can share for quite a while. Millennials really got us into Glassdoor and Fishbowl and these types of things where we can see more discussion, more openness. Gen Z is going to be much more open. They'll go into these forums using their names. So the third is around pragmatic. This is a pragmatic generation that's always looking for ways to do more with less, whether it's their money, their time, or the natural resources available to us all. Time is one of their most valuable commodities. They're really breaking stereotypes of past youth. Teen sex is down, teen drinking is down, teen drug use, illegal drug use is down, legal drugs that they get illegally is up. So doing things, Adderall, these types of things, as a way of keeping up. When I was young, people took drugs to check out. Gen Z's taking them to try and stay in the game, to try and stay ahead. They're volunteering. Number taking advanced placement exams in high school in order to excel and accelerate and move forward in college faster and save money at an all-time high. Working, 60% have a gig, side gig, way of making money that may be in addition to the job that they have. All of this drive, this push forward. I'm seeing middle school students, they're talking about how stressed out they are and that they stayed up all night studying, but they're doing it as kind of a badge of honor. It's like a competition of who's most exhausted. You hear this at work sometimes, but it's really shocking when you hear it from middle school students. It's having a toll. We hear a lot now about the mental health crisis, which was started well before COVID and accelerated through it. But we're continuing to see it. We need to look at all the different sources that are bringing it on. In our research, 42% of Gen Z said they usually or have always felt anxious or stressed or depressed over the last 3 years. What's stressing them out is something that's important to look at. This isn't the only thing, but it's one thing I don't see talked about is money. This is a generation that is concerned about money. They're concerned about taking care of themselves. They're concerned about getting into college. They don't want college debt. They've heard the stories. And I hear these stories from the children of the 1% that are stressed out about money and how are they going to take care of themselves? How are they going to do these things? 63% are savers. If they get money, they're finding ways to save it. They're stocking it away. They're thinking about the rainy day, always looking at what might happen next. And they're having a much higher level of financial literacy. They're seeking it out themselves, but organizations are also responding and providing the information to them, actively recruiting 8, 9, 10-year-olds into the business, knowing you got to get them early, because when you get them, you have a better chance for life. Here's a stat that surprised us that went down, one of the few. Between the January 2020 and 2021, a lower percentage went from 38 to 32%, said around the importance of making a lot of money, which seems counterintuitive, right? They're really concerned about money, but it's not about making a lot. It's not about getting rich. It's about having enough. The things that went up, making a difference in the world and wanting to enjoy their work. So why does this matter? One of the things this generation, it comes up in our research time and time again, is around control, around empowerment, around wanting to have options, whether it's with their money, with their impact, with their time, with the jobs that they're picking. They want to have control. You know, it's said as human beings that we crave what it is we think we lack, and they feel like they haven't had it throughout their life. Where this matters is if we think about the COVID work from home style and Gen Z's approach on thinking about work and really never having worked in a companies in the professional world the way that many of us might have known in the past. 9 to 5, traditional ways of working are on life support. This is a generation that gravitates toward organizations that reward productivity, collaboration, creativity, versus time spent sitting at a desk. And companies are responding in really creative ways. Hornbeck is a company in Germany that is going beyond the flexibility for white-collar workers, but actually giving employees in their retail stores, in their distribution centers, flexibility, feeling control, empowerment, while still doing the things they need to do to run the company. They're doing things like, as annual salary increases come up, allowing them to trade that increase to work less hours a week, trade it off for time. They're allowing them to choose part-time, temporarily, or on a full-time basis. They're allowing them to pick slots of time that they're going to work, that they'll be committed to work. And we have several clients here in the US that are doing the exact same thing, that they offered this early in the pandemic as a way of keeping people coming, but they found that it also helped with the retainment and keeping people, not just recruiting, but keeping them in the business, keeping them engaged, keeping them productive, keeping them feeling like they're part of the solution. So Gen Z has a different view on success than what we've seen in past generations. Rather than looking at the outside and focused on the money or making a lot of money or the status, we're seeing many more of them focused on internal desires, on satisfaction, on connectivity, on strength of the relationships with others. Yes, finances are important, but what they talk about when they talk about money is not worrying, being able to support themselves or their family, being comfortable, having security. They're much more baseline needs that this generation tends to be focused on. So we know where we've been, and we kind of have an idea of where we are right now. Knowing where we'll go next has gotten exponentially harder. To understand where we may go, we need to read between the lines, or read between the bubbles, maybe. You know, the changes Gen Z will usher in as they really go into the work world in mass over the next 10 years is going to blow away the amount of change that we've seen over the past 50. They are limitlessly creative and empowered, but they're also navigating life without the guardrails that past generations have known. In the process, they're calling into question geopolitical and business assumptions that have been in place for decades. Through this, they're changing our society, they're changing our culture, and it's going to continue to evolve and change over time. The future is already here. We just need to look at how we can be proactive, how we can embrace it, and how we can use it for our own competitive advantage. All right, turn it out for questions. Thank you.
On your tables are these questions. If you want to submit a question form, and the ladies will be around to pick those up. So Marcy, our first question that we have today, what podcasts or books would you recommend for engaging the leadership and Gen Z? So like, how do we learn more about Gen Z and engaging them? And what would you recommend?
Wow. I've got a list of about a dozen different podcasts I listen to on a daily basis, but they're not specific to Gen Z. It's more about societal change and the topics they're talking about and thinking about what the implications are of them. And I'm happy to put out that list. I don't want to publicly endorse anybody, but I'm happy to share the list that I personally listen to keep up with this, as well as the books. I've usually got about 5 going at one time.
Are they marketing podcasts, or are they more social
It's across the gamut.
Okay.
Everything from science to marketing to employees, more around life issues.
Good, thank you. So another question that came up was, how do you support companies who are having, like, they have employers of all different ages, and overcoming that gap of working together on a team? So you have a baby boomer who is with a Gen Z. How do you overcome that or give recommendations for leaders as they engage that?
There's a lot of different approaches we use. I mean, the way of thinking about it that I like most, or has helped most with the work that I've done, it's called intergenerational empathy, which sounds kind of woo-hoo, right? Intergenerational empathy is just the idea of understanding. You know, that's what I try to do with sharing Gen Z. It's not giving you all the answers. It's not saying they're right. It's not saying, but just understanding why. You know, why are they different? Where are they coming from? And I think it's the same benefit can go across the different generations. I mean, doing the same thing, looking right now across a few different areas, including our own business, at women in the workforce. And I can tell you my experiences as a Gen Xer coming up through the workforce and my expectations. 25, 30-year-olds or new moms now have very different expectations than what I did. You know, I had a view of, I can do it, I can rough it out, I can, you know, and there are a lot of them, not all of them, a lot of them are like, why should we have to? And they're right. It's not, we need to look at our systems and our systems that can change. But unless we have that understanding, unless, you know, women my age understand where today's youth are, where the younger people are, and the younger people understanding where we came from, it's not explaining or justifying or validating any of them. It's just understanding. I think that's the beginning of the discussions. The other aspect of it is we have a psychographic segmentation we've done of Gen Z that we also do with the other generations. With this, it's almost kind of throwing generations out the window. It's saying, let's look at who we are as individuals, as people, what our needs are. And I think when we start to look at it that way, we find across the generations, we have a lot of the same desires, needs, wants. We're just not necessarily expressing them in the same way.
Very good, thank you. We have lots of questions, but we only have time for probably two. When marketing to Gen Z, what are the channels that should be used?
That's a good question. So, put it this way. So, when I work with companies, a lot of companies right now, up until now, we'll see if it continues, recruitment's been their top challenge. Like, how do we recruit them? How do we bring them in? And of course, retainment's part of the problem, and it's one of the reasons they have to do so much recruitment, because they're not able to retain them. What I tell them is, set the recruiting aside. If you have to focus anywhere, focus on your retaining, because they're the ones that are going to tell each other. Same thing if you're a consumer business. This is a generation that listens to each other. They're looking to their friends, not even influencers in the same way as what we saw with millennials, because they don't believe it. You know, they're skeptical of it. They're questioning all of it. So they're looking at each other. And within organizations, they're used to being able to go to things like Glassdoor and these. If you go marketing them or giving them the big pitch, yeah, that's nice, and set it aside. Then they go online and they look, you know, at the different sources to find out what the real message is. And the same thing's happening whether it's as a consumer company or if it focused on it from an employee perspective.
Very good. Well, we're going to have to cut it off there, but Marcy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, what a wonderful way to start off the forum. What a intriguing way of looking at the next generation. I had to tell her that my daughter is 19. I see a lot of similarities on what I don't understand about Generation X, so appreciate that. But our next speaker is JP Nassef. JP is CEO of Jobs Ohio here, and he is the president and CEO, leads a dedicated team of the people responsible for business attraction and investments in our community here in Ohio. What impresses me most about JP is he was a military person. He served in the Air Force right out of graduating from Dayton University, received his master's degree from the University of South Carolina. He is a lifelong resident of the Dayton area. He has 4 children, all boys, 2 twins, 17 and a half, so he's got a lot on his plate for that. Married to his lovely wife. He's also been well recognized by his community and peers. Special awards were things like the Dave Hobson Dayton Region Advocate Award. He also received the Distinguished Public Service Award and Community Ambassador Award from the Air Force, as well as the 40 Under 40 Award and Regional Leadership Award from the Dayton Business Journal. Now, to be truthful, JP wrote 4 lines on here that I was supposed to talk about and stop. So we won't go any further. Introduce JP. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chad. Appreciate that. I got to tell you, Samira and Dee, what an amazing event. I travel all over the state, just kind of sharing what we're doing, Jobs Ohio, the progress that's being made by our state. And this is amazing. It is really a symbolic of what makes Ohio different. It's a core part of our value proposition is that we show up, we turn out, we contribute to something that's greater or bigger than our own interests. This is a perfect example of that. I want to congratulate both of you, but all of you for being part of this. It's a big deal. I was involved a long time ago in regional economic development, back 15 years ago at the Dayton Development Coalition. And the thing that made the difference when we were fighting a base realignment and closure was our entire community showed up, whether they had any knowledge of the military or the Air Force or what was happening. They showed up, they advocated, they were part of the team, and as a result, in that case, during the time when 25% of military infrastructure was shut down, that base has doubled in size in terms of its employees, and it's quadrupled in its economic impact in the region as the largest single site employer in Ohio. So what you're doing is important, it matters, and I want to congratulate you for that. Chad, I do appreciate the introduction, but I went to the University of Southern California, not USC. That's fine. I have nothing against South Carolina. I have 2 older boys that go to Clemson. They play basketball for Clemson, but I got my grad degree at USC way back in the day. So thank you for being here. Today I'm going to share a little bit with you about Jobs Ohio, Ohio's private economic development corporation. I'm going to talk to you and share information about this phenomenon that's happening across our state. It is as good or better than it appears. It's very exciting what's happening. And frankly, we've worked for 40 or 50 years. We've stuck with it. And the rest of the country and the world, frankly, is waking up and seeing the value proposition that all of us appreciated and have enjoyed for the last several decades. So with that, you're going to get a little bit about Jobs Ohio, because when I started here close to 4 years ago, I didn't really realize the unique platform that we had here in Ohio. So I'm going to share what it is with you, just so you have an appreciation and understanding for it. We're Ohio's private economic development corporation. For 4 attributes make us unique. The first is that we're private. 2011, essentially, the state spun out the Department of Development into a 501c4. A lot of obvious and maybe some not so obvious benefits to that when you're competing for the allocation of global capital. Being private allows us to move quickly. Governments are never known for their speed or agility. We're able to work with these companies, and when we do a deal with a company, we require them to share financial information, strategy information, things that they don't want shared with their competitors or with the financial markets until they're ready to share them. So we provide a discrete place to negotiate and put a deal together. We have to acknowledge there are always, and there should be, concerns about transparency. It's very important. And with so much at stake and so many resources exchanging hands, the public has a desire, in my view, has a right to know. And so we endeavor to be the most transparent private organization of our kind in the country. And while I can't tell you if we're the best and most transparent, I can tell you we're in the top 1% of private entities. And that's not me saying it, that's according to the types of organizations that judge the transparency of private organizations. For the last 5 years in a row, we've received the Platinum Seal of Transparency. It's a designation based on what we do, not what we say. And we share more than is required, but we don't share what needs to be kept private for the companies, because we do not want to surrender our competitive advantage that being private provides to us. The second attribute that makes Jobs Ohio a unique economic development platform is our funding. And Ohio is a control state. We control the distribution of spirituous liquors around the state of Ohio, one of the few in the country that do that. And in 2013, Jobs Ohio went to the bond markets, raised $1.4 billion, deposited it into the general fund of the state to purchase the rights to operate the liquor enterprise, to distribute spirituous liquors around Ohio, and they used the profits from that enterprise to fund economic development. So having that stable funding is very important. Again, it allows us to be creative. It allows us to move quickly and put a deal together in a very, very ultra-competitive environment. To give you an idea on the order of magnitude, you can see it on the screen. We're close to the size of a Fortune 1000 company for the spirituous liquor enterprise. Top line was south of $2 billion, about 1.73, with a net profit going to fund economic development initiatives just last year of $312 million. And you can see the growth rate when we inherited it, when we purchased this agreement from the state of Ohio. The average year-over-year growth of the bottom line was south of 4%. The average has been just shy of 8% since we established this under Jobs Ohio. And you can see we have a profit-sharing agreement that we have with the state. So once we hit a certain amount of profit for the liquor enterprise, the state gets 75 cents of each additional dollar. And the arrangement's been very successful. We've performed well, but not counting the $312 million last year, the profit-sharing arrangement has delivered $489 million of profit sharing back to the state general fund. That goes into services and into state government to come back into what we provide to what the state government provides to constituents. Last year, that profit-sharing number was about $110 million alone. So it's a successful arrangement. It allows us to move quickly. That stable funding allows us to put together creative, customized deals and to win, and we're winning. The third attribute that makes this platform unique is how we go into the marketplace. Ohio is a unique state. You all know this. Most of our regional competitors are dominated by one industry or by one large metropolitan area. We're a state of city-states. You got the big cities, the 3 Cs. You've got the medium-sized cities, Dayton and Toledo, maybe Youngstown, Akron, Canton. And you've got the micropolitans, or I call them hallmark towns. And I think that mix, that diverse mix of communities is one of our strengths. But with that, they're all very unique. With an underlying shared set of values of Ohioans. We work hard. We roll up our sleeves. We're practical. We like to build things. We like to see results. We're genuine and authentic. We care about our community, and in general, we care about things bigger than ourselves. So it's not a narcissistic culture. It's more of a community and team culture in Ohio. But we go into the marketplace through 6 regional partners. So we have a combination of a state organization, state-level organization. It's great. You can get to a decision maker. You can get to resources quickly. But we can deliver the resources in a very granular, community-based way. We do that through our partners. The partner in this part of the state's Team NEO. They cover a large area, and they do an outstanding job. But it's really another differentiator. We can go from state level right down to the local level very quickly, and it allows us to compete more effectively, and we're winning. We also have a presence globally because Ohio is a global state. We have a significant amount of foreign direct investment in our state. We have relationships all over the world. We currently have people on the ground through consulting relationships in 10 international markets. And we, on a regular basis, engage with those markets. We make trips. I just got back from a 3-day trip to Seoul and to Tokyo. to visit with existing relationships and to mine additional relationships. And Ohio is on the radar. We are on the map like I've never seen before. It's exciting. It's incredible to see. And then at the center, the fourth attribute, to me, the key attributes are team. Most economic development organizations rightfully have generalists that really know a lot about their community. They're passionate about it. They care about it. That's a fundamental requirement to be in this business. We pull our people out of the private sector, in the 9 private sectors and the 1 public sector that we focus on, and then we through torture, turn them into economic developers. Not really torture. It's not imposed torture. And that allows us, when we're sitting down with a company like Intel or Ford or Sierra Nevada Corporation, we have decades of expertise from that industry to negotiate toe-to-toe with them. Not to put together a deal that's just good for Ohio, but to put one that's great for the client and that's great for Ohio. And that creates the basis for a great long-term relationship. And again, in Ohio, we value those relationships. We're committed to them. We just don't give them lip service. So those 4 attributes make us unique. We don't focus on the whole economy. We focus on these 9 private sectors, and then we added 1, the public sector, the military and federal sector. And you can see the stats on the number of jobs and the amount of the gross state product that we focus on. Typically higher wage, and if they are tradable, they're from tradable sectors. So if the business was going to be there because of population growth, a gas station, a hospital, a movie theater, then we won't get involved in those. But if it can go to Texas or to California or to New York, then we're going to compete for it in these sectors. Also, every deal we do has to produce a return on investment for the state of Ohio. And the way we calculate, it's not a return on investment for Jobs Ohio, it's for the state of Ohio. The way we calculate it are the state payroll taxes from the net new jobs created from each of the deals that we do is always more than the amount of incentive that goes to make that deal happen in the first place. And believe it or not, in the 3,200 plus deals that we've done in the last 11 years, the average break even is only 16 months. So the state is getting, just in payroll taxes, we don't count local taxes, sales taxes, real estate taxes, we don't count any of that. It's a very conservative calculation. So there's a lot of value coming back to the state. The break even is 16 months on average. For the bigger, more strategic deals, that can go out to 10 to 15 years payback. For the smaller deals, it's less than 16 months. But the average is 16 months. And the companies, over the last 11 years, once they come to Ohio, once we get them here or they expand here, they overperform from that break even by a lot. And you can see the numbers. Over 160% more jobs than committed, close to 300% more payroll, over 200% more capital is invested for every dollar that Jobs Ohio puts into one of these deals. The companies invest over $75. And since the creation of the organization, over $3 billion in state payroll taxes have gone back into the state treasury. So $1.4 billion to purchase the liquor enterprise, close to $500 million in profit sharing, over $3 billion in state tax. The value's been incredible. And it's working, and we're hitting our stride. In 2019, we expanded the scope of our services and our programs to take advantage of opportunities and to mitigate risks and threats. The programs in gray are what we started out with. In 2019, we did a significant expansion, so the organization's gone through quite a transformation, as has the nature of the priorities of some of our regional partners as we attempt to deploy these programs, make the public aware of the programs, and then put them to work for all of you, and they have been working. Last year in 2021, which was our 10th year of existence, the organization, working with our partners and the administration, delivered more, supported the creation of, let's be clear, the private sector creates the jobs. We support, through our programs, the creation of those jobs, created more new jobs, more payroll, more successful economic development projects, while achieving the highest customer service score through an independent net promoter scores than at any time in the organization's history. And that's before Intel, Ford, Honda. That's before we count all those. And you can look at some of the things that have happened in the last few years around the state because more and more companies are starting to learn about the value proposition of Ohio. So this is just in the last couple years. The second largest foreign direct investment in the history of Ohio was the first for maybe 6 months was SemCorp in Sydney. It's going to create over 1,000 jobs to build a key component in the electronic vehicle battery supply chain. Sierra Nevada Corporation, for the first time since Orville Wright was alive, there will be modification, maintenance, and repair of military aircraft at an Ohio facility, again, for the first time in 75 years, frankly, since the Air Force has been a separate service. And it's the first domino in many, because I got to tell you, those defense contractors are not going to want Fadi, who owns Sierra Nevada Corporation, to be the only person close to his customer at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So there are the largest hangars in America are being built right now in Ohio at an airfield in Dayton, Ohio. And we've got a pipeline of additional aerospace companies that are knocking on the door behind them. Honda, you've all seen that announcement. What a great Ohio company. Now the largest, again, foreign direct investment that's been made in our state. 2,000 jobs in Fayette County, in between Cincinnati and Columbus and Dayton. 2,000 jobs to produce electric vehicle batteries, and a commitment from Honda to retain 8,000 jobs at their existing facilities while they transition their production from internal combustion to EVs. Ford in Lorain County, multi-billion-dollar investment, thousands of jobs created to assemble and manufacture electric vehicles. Toledo, GM made a commitment to transition their internal combustion motors to electric motors that are going to power their fleet. In Lordstown, 2,000 or over 1,000 jobs building electric vehicle manufacturing through a joint venture with GM and LG. That industry is transitioning, and we are leading that transition in the country right now, not Michigan. And there's several others. I won't go through all of them. We also started an inclusive economic development program specifically targeted to make sure smaller companies, medium-sized and small businesses, were able to tap into some of these resources, all the way from companies with 1 to 2 people, entrepreneurs just getting started out, to 50 to 100 person companies that need a new piece of equipment to scale and enter and compete in a new market. We've done over 300 of those projects all over the state in just 2 years. So my hat's off to our partners and our team for delivering these. Air service is another one. We've got the first international air service expansion to an Ohio airport since 2019, when Aer Lingus committed to Cleveland for a nonstop from Cleveland to Dublin, which is a great gateway to the Middle East and to Europe. We've got Breeze Airways up here at Akron-Canton, their highest performing route. Breeze's highest performing route in their inventory is at the Akron-Canton Airport. So what did they do? They added more routes. They even added 3 routes in Cincinnati. And we're about to announce, I can't share it with you unfortunately today, but we're going to announce another international route, I believe, very soon. So far we've added 335,000 seats to Ohio's air traffic inventory. It helps business, it helps consumers, it's great for attracting workforce, and we're going to keep it moving. And then you've had success right here. And I know just with Intel alone, I was talking to Chad earlier, just from Intel, we're going to have an average of between 7,000 and 10,000 construction workers employed just building that facility. Doesn't count the building of their supply chain partners, of the other large companies that are coming here. So companies that feed construction, companies that are in construction, providing raw materials, skilled services, trades, that we don't count in our metrics. It's going to be a boom town. But we know that you've had great success here with projects like Gojo and Morgan, and there are more coming. So as I look back, I moved here in the late 70s with an Air Force family. And I know when I got here, I was in middle school. It seemed like a steady drumbeat of bad news, things leaving town, where I lived near Dayton, Ohio. And essentially been a drumbeat since post-World War II with the creation of the site selection industry. We saw companies and people start going south and west. In the 60s, with the air conditioner was invented and scaled, a faster momentum south and west. And I know this is going to resonate with all of you. The term Rust Belt was coined in the 70s and 80s, significant industrial decline, and the Sun Belt and the West began to boom. Then NAFTA hit us. Again, the whole American Midwest was hit. Ohio was hit especially hard. And then in the OOs, offshoring primarily to Asia. And I'll give you an example of what happened in the OOs. When I left the Air Force, went to work for Deloitte, and then started to notice and get involved with this thing called economic development. We lost Frigidaire, Mead, Delco, GM, NCR. Anchors of our community. If the community had not rallied to support Wright-Patterson during the BRAC, it would have been, so what you're doing matters. But that's the backdrop to going from the center of the industrial age to a flyover state, a Rust Belt state, or are you all Iowa? And I know you've all heard it. I hear it when I try. I used to live in Southern California. Why are you going back there? Why are you going back to Ohio? I had businesses in New York. Why do you live in Ohio? We've heard it our whole lives. I love it because of the balance we get. The value proposition is pretty amazing. You can have wonderful business and professional and investment success, and at the same time, you can take care of your community and family priorities. And for my wife and my personal values, that's what was valuable to me. And for most people that make the choice to be in Ohio, that's typically in their value set. They want that balance in some way, shape, or form. So after that arc, post-World War II, all the way to 2010, Jobs Ohio gets created in 2011. I think right maybe about at the bottom of all of this. We were the second highest in job losses in the country. For the 10 sectors that we focus on, we had lost just shy of 20% of the jobs, the high-paying professional jobs. We were 47th in the country in economic growth, 42nd in economic outlook, and 49th in growth in the 10 sectors because we were in negative growth. It was dark. Jobs Ohio got created. We focused on those 10 sectors. And now we're in front of a generational opportunity for our state. And it's based on the confluence of these five factors. First, the value proposition of the state is being recognized. And I'm going to go through a couple stats here because they're very interesting. The volume of economic development projects, which means investment and more inflow of capital. We were 9 out of 50 states in 2011. We've been number 2 behind Texas 2 years in a row. As a best states for business, our business climate was amongst the bottom 10 in the country. It was not a friendly state to invest capital. We had a corporate tax rate that was prohibitive. We taxed the investment of capital in our state. And we couldn't do more back then to chase the businesses away. Now we're a top 10 economic climate state. And we have been for 2 years in a row. Our labor productivity continues to be the best, not only the top productivity in the Midwest, but it's becoming more productive at a faster rate than any of the other states in the Midwest. Access to capital is a great one. It's the growth capital that takes small innovative companies and turns them into large growing companies. We were dead last of our peer states, 17 out of 17 just 4 years ago. Dead last. That doesn't even count New York, doesn't count California. They're off the charts. We're number 3 now. So if you're an innovative company or an entrepreneur, you have reasonable expectations that you're going to be able to access the capital you need to grow. And I could go down these, but you can see quality of life, 13 to 2. Affordability, we've always been affordable. We're the most affordable state, according to U.S. News, in the country. And in terms of resilient economies, we're the number 9 most resilient state economy in the country. We're the most resilient state economy in the Midwest, and we are becoming more resilient at a faster rate than our good friends on the coast of California, Oregon, Washington, Virginia, Massachusetts, and New York. Having a resilient economy has a lot of benefits as we weather ups and downs in the economic cycle. But we have a very resilient, diverse economy in this state, and more and more foreign investors are choosing Ohio. We have the fourth most foreign direct investment in the country. Again, the numbers are all going in the right direction. If you look at what the companies are looking for, talent is always one or two on the list, and we've got the talent. Our young professional population is growing twice as fast than anywhere else in the Midwest, and we have the most of them in the Midwest. Annual degree completions, close to 175,000 per year, and if you think about it, right now, close to half of those leave and go to another state. Go for a lot of reasons. A lot of it is their job opportunity here. Well, job opportunities getting taken care of right now, and so we're going to develop experiential learning, co-ops, internships, so we'll be able to retain a lot of the kids that have been leaving traditionally will stay. Individuals that left and are looking to come back but didn't have the opportunity, we're going to see them come back. My neighbor, Halloween night, came over, said, I wanted to thank you. My son, who's been gone for 20 years in California, he said, you just did a deal with their company. They're opening a plant in Ohio. He's moving back with the grandkids after 20 years. I thought, that's exactly what I love to hear. And I hope one day my kids at least will have a great option to come back to Ohio and to be here. I won't go through the affordability. Already talked about this. We're benefiting from a COVID-calibrated economy. We invested during COVID. During that downturn, we got aggressive with our marketing on the coasts and overseas. There was a trend that didn't start with COVID, the people, business, and capital leaving the coasts. We saw the trend, and we wanted to make sure Ohio was in the conversation because we knew we had a brand problem, an awareness problem. Are you Iowa? Are you good for business? Are you a Rust Belt state? Well, you can call us whatever we want, but we're a top 10 business climate state. We're the most affordable state in the country. We have the best location in the country. We have a diverse economy. Call us what you want, but it's probably not the Ohio that we know. So we got aggressive with marketing, and now since we've had done 60 separate economic development projects with over 15,000 job commitments and $25 billion of capital commitments just from those large markets on the coast. They're not all going to Texas. They're not all going to Tennessee. They're not all going to Denver. They're not all going to Florida. More and more, they're coming to Ohio, and our pipeline is filled with even more of them. And reshoring. In the summer of 2020, we weren't sure if reshoring was going to be a thing, if it was going to be real or just a buzzword, but we invested, and we've now got 15 projects that we've closed with over 6,000 job commitments and over $21 billion of capital investment commitments, and many more in the pipeline that want to bring their capital and their business to Ohio. And we're investing now. All of that success doesn't empty the gas tank. In the next 4 to 5 years, we're from all sources going to be investing over $40 billion in strategic economic development. So the fire that's burning has plenty of more fuel to be poured on it. So barring a global economic calamity, I believe based on what I see and what I know, we're going to have a significant, healthy economic run for the next 5 to 10 years. And of course, the Intel deal's great. We had hit all those record numbers and had all that momentum before the Intel deal. What the Intel deal did was, along with making us happy and giving us validation for the choices that we've made and for Ohio and our value proposition, it was a commercial for us. It really, we couldn't spend as much on marketing and branding for our state than the Intel announcement alone gave us. And what that did to our already full pipeline, those businesses, people with capital to invest, and those families looking to get out of El Segundo or out of New York that weren't even, Ohio wasn't on the radar, it put Ohio on the radar. And it brought one of the most strategic industries, centered the global industry in the future in our state. So it was a big deal. So what's next? So as we look at our pipeline across all categories, what you see on the screen is just the real big mega projects, the monsters, the multi-billion-dollar investments, thousands of jobs. We track this pipeline, and it fluctuates, but we're up just in mega projects over 300% from a normal average Jobs Ohio year. And that has been fluctuating from 200% up to 1,200% up. We'll win some, we'll lose some, but we're going to get some. And the pipeline is up in every category. 100 jobs or more, 250, 500, 700, every category. We're keeping our eye on talent. We've studied the market and what we're going to need, and this is going to be a national issue, not just an issue for Ohio, is the demand for STEM talent. That's going to be the resource. We're projecting that we're going to need 450,000 additional the number of STEM talent over the next 10 years. We're working with the state government, the federal government, our regional and local partners, all the colleges and universities to make sure that we can have the right curriculum, the right experiential learning programs, the right types of investment. And it's going to be a challenge and a lift, but we're going to take care of it. So before I close, we're watching these economic and geopolitical headwinds, probably like all of you are. It is concerning to us, and we monitor this against our pipeline and our deal flow every week. And so I can say is our pipeline remains strong. Deals continue to close. We'll make more announcements between now and the end of the year that are significant. But there is a little bit of a softening. We've had 5 companies delay. Deals that were already done have delayed by at least a year. We had one company out and out cancel. That's never happened. After a deal's been done, it's never happened to us. We've had one. And so we're watching with caution, but we're in an aggressive, still in an aggressive posture. The pipeline is very strong, and we're very excited about the possibilities for the future. So with that, thank you all for being involved in economic development, for what you do at your own businesses, and for how you contribute to the greater good. And Dee, thank you very much for the invitation to be here, and congratulations to all of you on great success. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. So the first question is, with the competition you had with possibly many states and even with Intel staying in Oregon or Arizona, what was it that brought Intel to Ohio? We know there's billions of dollars in incentives, but what was the piece that brought them here?
I thank you for that question. We were not the richest deal, I can tell you that. There were 39 other sites. It's very interesting how it played out. The deal initially came from one of our local economic development partners, a local elected official in Northeast Ohio, sent an email to Gelsinger when she heard that they were looking for a new plant. We don't have a significant manufacturing for semiconductors here. She sent it out there, and Gelsinger responded. He said, okay, guys, he said his team, go take a look at Lorain, Ohio, and Northeast Ohio. Came in, they looked, they didn't have a site that met the very, very rigorous and strenuous requirements. So using the power of the network, our regional and local partners, it came to us very quickly in May 3rd, and we had to turn it around on May 7th. We scoured the site because we've been preparing for this moment. Scoured the state. One site came back that met the very stringent requirements. We replied, and I really believe the team from Intel thought, we're just going to go do this. Gelsinger wants us to go look at Ohio. We'll go look at it. We'll come back and say, okay, let's just go to Virginia like we had planned to begin with. But they liked what they saw. And at the end, when we asked them the same question, why did you pick Ohio? They told us you weren't the richest deal, that we had a mix of what they needed with talent and the site. We had a reasonable offer for them. But they said, we trusted that you, meaning Ohio, the administration, the economic development apparatus, that we would deliver on our promises. Ultimately, they believed that we would deliver in the ups and downs of an ambitious endeavor like that we would deliver. That's what Gelsinger told us. And we are going to deliver, and we are going to follow through on our promises. And then in the end, that's why Ohio and the people of Ohio are going to be successful.
Great, thank you. Another question, what is Ohio or Jobs Ohio doing to attract qualified legal immigrants to fulfill the many unfilled jobs in the state?
You know, I don't know that we have a specific initiative around attracting immigrants. We have a talent initiative that does two things. One is called Talent Attraction Services, where virtually every deal that we do has a talent component, and we bundle it with whatever other incentive, and we embed our talent team, members of our talent team, in with the company, work with their HR department, identify what they need, and then we help them navigate the workforce development ecosystem of whatever metropolitan area they located in. If it's a legal immigrant, if it's someone that's been here for multiple generations, we deliver on the talent promise that we made. The second part of the talent initiative is to work on the long-term needs with colleges, universities, job centers to make sure that we are sharing information on what types of attributes are required for the workforce of the future. So it's a bifurcated, but it's not specifically focused on the status of your time as a citizen.
Thank you. In Ohio, airports like Cleveland and Columbus and some others have lost some of the hubs, be it the United or the merger of Continental and other airlines. Do you see any changes or opportunities coming to Ohio to maybe bring some airlines and make Ohio airports some of their hubs?
So the whole getting to be a hub, I think we're a little bit of a distance away from that, but we did start in 2019 an air service restoration program, and you all know this because you live here. Ohio airports have been pulverized in the amount of service that we've got. And if you look at the data in the surrounding regions of Pittsburgh and Indianapolis and outside, they have not suffered the way we have suffered. So we started a program during COVID. We said we wanted to get aggressive. We figured COVID leveled the playing field because air service collapsed just about everywhere, but we figured if we had a program, as the airlines started coming back to establish service, we'd put ourselves in the front of the line. And as it's turning out, it's playing out that way. I think it's going to be a bit of cat and mouse where we're going to get these routes like the Dublin route, the Breeze Airways route. We have another route from Cleveland to Seattle. They've added a second route already because it's been successful. As we start getting these routes in here through this program, as Ohioans, consumers, and businesses use the routes, the airlines will start bringing more, and eventually that should and could and hopefully will lead to a hub.
All right, JP, thank you very much. Congratulations to your team on bringing in intel.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right, let's take a seat, please. We're going to get started. Two phenomenal speakers thus far. That was quite interesting to hear all the insight. Makes you proud to be a Buckeye, and really enjoyed that last talk by PJ. Our next speaker, if you guys actually know D, you know he's a stickler for time, so I'm going to actually cut the bio a little short. I didn't get the chance to talk to Tom Hasfurther exactly what his important points were. He has a good bullet or a good summary in the bio there in your book. But what you'll find out about Tom Hasfurther is he's the Executive Vice President of Packaging Corporation of America, PCA, the fourth largest producer of containerboard and corrugated products in the United States. PCA employs over 13,000 people with annual revenues of over $6 billion. Prior to his current position, he was Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing for corrugated products. He is a graduate of Miami University in Oxford. He's been with the company for 45 years, a supporter of the Farmer Business School, as well as the athletics at Miami University. And he has been married since 1977 and has a son, two sons and a daughter. I was asked to introduce Mr. Hasfurther as a result of my company, Kitty Poo Club, having an incredible partnership with PCA. One of the unique aspects of PCA is that they empower their people at all levels of the organization to serve the needs of their customers. What does that look like practically? Their managers are encouraged to have an owner, entrepreneurial mindset. This is a rare to see today in big corporations, as they're very often very narrowly focused. I would say that this is also a staple that really sets them apart from their largest competitors. PCA's motto is, we do what's right for our customers, not what's easy. This motto became very evident to me when I was looking to develop our third generation disposable cat litter box. PCA's sales and management team was committed to taking on this challenge. I was trying to do something that had never been done before, and we were pushing the boundaries in the packaging world. Their commitment to our success led to thousands of hours of R&D and testing, material sourcing, and working with suppliers in multiple areas of the country to produce our final product, a product that rivals anything in the $4 billion cat litter space today. The PCA advantage is people, customers, and trust. The core values are evident in PCA's thousands of long-term supplier partnerships and a testament to the culture and values Mr. Hathfurther's leadership has developed throughout his teams. Kiddie Poo Club is a better company today because of our partnership with PCA and their commitment to our success. With that, it's my pleasure to welcome Tom Hathfurther.
Thank you, Chad. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. I think it's probably all downhill from here after that introduction. That was pretty remarkable. Listen, I just, first of all, it's great to be back in Ohio. It's where, believe it or not, it's where PCA's roots are. We'll go through that just a little bit, but it's also, where my roots are in Columbus. And, once you're a Buckeye, you're always a Buckeye, I think. And, when I was listening to JP up here talk about Jobs Ohio, the things that are going on in the state and everything else, it's just, makes you proud to be a Buckeye. Let's start with a little history here first. PCA, dates all the way back to 1903. And it was I'm sorry, we're missing some, we got a little issue here. There we go. Let's go back one here. A merger of three companies came together to form Packaging Corporation of America. First was Central Fiber Products Company, headquartered in Quincy, Illinois, with a plant in Omaha. You had American Box Board, 1904 company, with plants in Grand Rapids and Chicago. And Ohio Box Board, the largest of the three, headquartered just north of here in Rittman, Ohio. Now, when that merger happened, in 1956, I believe it was, Forbes magazine, the headline of the article in Forbes magazine was, "Can 3 lemons make a good pie?" A big challenge. Now, fortunately, I wasn't there back then. But eventually, in 61, that merged company with $138 million in sales went on the New York Stock Exchange with the ticker symbol PKG. And was kind of off to the races. But as you probably know from lots of experiences, whether it's companies you've invested in, companies you own, companies you've observed, in 65, Packaging Corporation was acquired by a company called Tenneco. Tenneco was a very large conglomerate. They kept the company for 35 years. And as happens sometimes, Tenneco was a successful company, but a myriad of different companies, gas and oil, shipbuilding, timber, agriculture, farm implement, automotive, you see kind of unrelated companies and pretty hard to get focused about what they do. So at that time, a decision was made, and unfortunately, I had the dubious honor of trying to sell what then was Packaging Corporation of America. Not a lot of fun knowing your company's breaking up into various pieces, but you always take a positive attitude and you try to make the best of it. In the end, the company did break up into a lot of different divisions. We were called Tenneco Packaging at that time. We had a plastics division and a corrugated box division. The plastics division broke off on their own and went straight public. We did a leverage buyout, management team, and an outfit out of Chicago, Madison Dearborn Partners. We acquired the company and started a new chapter in the life of Packaging Corporation of America. Now, first we went private for a year to try to get the balance sheet in a little better shape than what it was. because back then we had 1.8 billion in sales and 2.2 billion in debt. Now, if any of you pay attention to your debt to equity ratio, that's not a very good one, okay? That is incredibly highly leveraged with much higher interest rates than even what we're faced today after the Fed's raised the interest rates numerous times. So consequently, we had a lot of heavy lifting to do. So, we went private for a year, we shed some assets, we sold some timberlands, we did some other things to at least get the balance sheet in better shape, and then we went back to the public markets and went back as a public company, believe it or not, with the same ticker symbol, PKG, because somebody in their brilliance throughout the history of the company had kept that ticker symbol. Now, I go back to the roots in Ohio a little bit here because as JP went through all the trials and tribulations that had taken place in this state, one of the things that we've done at PCA is we've kept a very large footprint here. Here gives you an idea of where we are across the United States, but then you can also hone in on basically Ohio and see that we've got 5 large operations and a design center here in Ohio. We have never abandoned Ohio at any point in time because this is still one of the core manufacturing states in the United States and always will be, in my opinion. I think it's really advantageous today that what is going on in Ohio, as you just heard this morning, or this afternoon, I should say, gives you great faith in what's to come. One thing you can't change is what this state is all about, and it is absolutely one of the core manufacturing states in the United States. So we're very proud to be here. We're growing. We've actually doubled our business in the last 10 years in this state. We've spent a lot of capital here. We continue to invest in a big way, and we've got a lot of really great future plans for this state, and we'll be utilizing places like Jobs Ohio to help us in any way they possibly can. Now you fast forward to what looks like a modern system today. This is our paper mill in Valdosta, Georgia. You might notice that great big tall 16-story building in there. That's a recovery boiler. The reason I picked this particular mill is because this mill is the most self-sufficient in energy in the United States. We sell back to the grid. So we've obviously made an incredibly large investment in doing this. We continue to make energy investments in all of our paper mills, primarily through turbines. But this is really representative of something unique to the industry. This is just an example of a box plant. This one happens to be in Burlington, Wisconsin. You can see that we take the paper rolls, we convert them into corrugated boxes, and these are the products that you get as a result. I don't think we have a kiddie poo box in here, but it certainly could have made the roster, that's for sure. Okay, let's talk about the industry a little bit, because this is quite interesting in this industry, because I don't think a lot of people think about the paper business or what all it entails and everything else. But we remain a top 10 manufacturing sector employer in 45 states. So we're an incredibly important industry. In many, many states, far larger than, let's say, the automotive industry as an example. We employ 950,000 people, okay, and support more than 2 million jobs throughout the supply chain. And just recently, this industry has continued to invest in big, big ways, especially the $5 billion that I mentioned here, which was, in infrastructure to continue to utilize the recycled fiber of our products. And $300 billion produced annually from a myriad of paper products. And if you just boil that down to corrugated, which is our business, and I'll backtrack just a little bit, one of the really great things about where we are today, and I think what was really successful for us, and you might be a good takeaway, is that once we broke off from Tenneco, once we were on our own, we were only in the containerboard and corrugated business. That was our core business. So we were able to focus on the one business that we really wanted to be in and that we knew a lot about. And we could go to market like that. We no longer had this struggle with cash. Where do I deploy the cash? Over in this business, over in this business. It's hard to keep the focus when you're pulling in all those different directions. But let's talk a little bit about a sustainability story, because this is what Dee kind of wanted me to cover and give you a little flavor for what's happened in this business. All right? Let's start with the forest lands. You think there's more or less standing timber today than there was in the 1950s? What would you say? More. 60% more. It's a huge success story. We grow our trees like others grow wheat or cotton or whatever that's how we grow our trees. We farm them, and we plant 4 for every one we cut. And of course, PCA, like our competitors, we're all part of a standard forestry initiative and sustainability program. We're all great stewards of the land and the environment. And, I'm not saying we were always like that, but that's certainly the way the industry is today. And it's a huge success story. So obviously the timber goes to the mills. As I talked about at the mill level, we work very hard on our cost and our quality and utilizing the fiber. That fiber is virgin fiber primarily for us. We also use recycled content to the extent of about 20%. Others are 100% recycled. The difference is you can't recycle unless you start with a virgin fiber. So that's the beginning of the stream. But basically, boxes can be recycled approximately 5 or 6 times. And then the pulp is just too small, too short, and it's basically biodegradable at that point. Then the mills ship to the box plants, all right, where we focus on doing what's right for our customers. As Chad mentioned earlier, we're very customer focused. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's primarily how we run our box plants and onto the end users. So let's also talk a little bit about, Chad mentioned the people customers trust. As you can see, this is basically our vision statement. This is how we operate. What does that mean? How do we, what does that basically mean from a people point of view? Listen, we really know people make the difference in this business. We can automate as much as we want. We can do all sorts of other things, but at the end of the day, people make the difference. That's why all these people are in this room. All these very successful people are in this room today, because people do make that difference. And we have what we call a winning culture. And our people know if they are not competitive and they're not prepared to go win every day in the marketplace, they're with the wrong company. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm not making judgments. But all I'm saying is you've got to be prepared to win every day. And when I think about the cycle that this state has gone through and all the things that have happened to this state, whether it was recessions, offshoring, all the things that JP mentioned, this state is a winner. That's why the success has turned in the other direction. That's why they've weathered the storm, and that's why we stuck with it as well, because we had winners here in Ohio that figured out how to get around all that and to make sure they would make it happen. Customers. A few of our people here today know this. Chad knows this for sure. The customer is at the top of our org chart. It's at the top of our org chart, which means I'm all the way down here somewhere, and I got to make sure that I'm spending my time trying to get up here in front of the customers and make sure I understand where the customers are. But why is the customer at the top of our org chart? It's at the top of our org chart to make sure that we put our resources as close to the customer as we possibly can. So we want the best talent, the best solutions, the best equipment, all the other things. I mean, we happen to make boxes, but really what we are is an ideas and solutions business for our customers. That's really what we are. And we try to make our customers as successful as they possibly can. And they, in turn, let us know what their plans are, where they're investing, so that we, in turn, can make the same investments and we can win together. That's the whole philosophy about how we operate. And the trust. The trust is what binds us together. It's the core of the relationship. We can't have what we have without having the trust between our folks and the customer. There's no question. I mean, we're in business to make money. I mean, we're a publicly held company. We've got a lot of shareholders we've got to serve and a lot of other stakeholders. So we're in the business to make money and to be profitable. And our growth has to be profitable growth. We never talk about growth just for the sake of growth. It's got to be profitable growth. We didn't grow our business fourfold since 2000 just to grow it. There's not that kind of margin in this business anyway to achieve that, because it's an incredibly capital-intensive business, as you could see by having mills and box plants. So our philosophy is we grow with our customers. We go where our customers are. We invest where our customers invest. And we've got tens of thousands of them. And they're very large to very small. But that's how we have to operate. And we have a little saying, that when there's inflationary times, or there are challenges that take place, or that things aren't working maybe in your direction, right, like perhaps is right now with higher interest rates. Are we in a recession? Are we not in a recession? Are we headed into one? Are we not headed into one? You know what? We just choose not to participate if that's the case, okay? It's just a mentality more than it is anything else. And I think that's another reason why Ohio is overcome in so many ways, because I think in this state there has been that same attitude. And it's just terrific to see so many people here today for a county to have this kind of interest in saying, how do we grow? How do we move to the next level? How do we do all these other sorts of things? Because I can tell you, we are fortunately as a company, we are participating in a lot of those things JP talked about. And reshoring is one of the big areas that's a great opportunity for us. And because we participate in all the states around the country, I mean, we're seeing a lot of it. And now Ohio is really starting to participate in it. So I just want to say, it's such a pleasure to be here and to be in front of such an enthusiastic group and great speakers. Our company has a very large future, and the future is in Ohio as well as a lot of other states. But it's our roots, and it's been a pleasure to be here. So thank you very much, and we got some time for questions, I guess, right? Thank you.
Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome.
The first question is, over the course of the years that you've been with the company, you've seen a lot of changes in the way that you package products for clients. Where has it come from, and where do you see it going in the future?
Well, I think I think probably one of the biggest changes we've seen that I've seen in the industry is that we just had few standard grades of board, and that would be basis weights, is what we would call basis weights, or the weight of the product. and only a few flutes that would be the fluted material that you'd have in the product. So there wasn't a lot of options for a lot of our customers. Today, it's a completely different ball game. I mean, there are lots of different grades. We have a lot of our own proprietary specialty grades that are all performance-based. And, it's our responsibility, I think also from a sustainability point of view, to make sure that you get the right box, the right weight, the right design, all the things that make it the most efficient through the entire supply chain.
Very good. You talked about how the people in your organization are really important and the longevity that they have there. How are you, as the first speaker was talking today, looking to attract the Gen Z?
Well, we've been very consistent, fortunately, through our history of we recruit in a lot of different ways. So, you might think the traditional way on college campuses and that sort of thing, which we do, all right? I think in addition, we look for even college graduates. We are looking for graduates that have had work experience, can demonstrate that they understand what work ethic really means. Obviously, they got to be smart, maybe even entrepreneurial in some ways. And I think in a lot of ways, I think the younger generations, they get a bad rap for the things that they're not instead of the things that they are. And we go out and seek those people that have the attributes that we're looking for and that understand what hard work is, what loyalty is, what customer focus is, and that are very trainable. In some ways, they're harder to find. In other ways, they're easier to find because if they're referred or somehow they've had another experience somewhere else, we can, it gives us an opportunity and a leg up to recruit them. And I just heard of a story the other day. I mean, it was, I don't remember what the university was, but it was in the southeast, and we send our executives in to do this recruiting, by the way, too, because they have a really good feel for what they want. And I think you want to put people who can really explain the company and have some relationship with the person they're talking to. But at any rate, this person fit the bill across the board and came to work for us. Also because his father, not in our industry, but in somewhat of a related industry, said, you have to go work for that company. And that means a lot to us. In addition, we sometimes we find the right person from a competitor who's not a fit for them, but would be a fit for us, or some other experienced people in the industry. We look everywhere for talent.
Very good. I think we have time for one last question. With the inflation on the rise and the supply chains disruptions, how do you help not only the company but your clients, like Chad, maintain their cost to not increase as much?
Well, as I said, we've got to give the best economic solution as we can. But because of the experience in this industry, this is a unique industry. We see all industries. We get to see everybody. So we're in all sorts of plants. I mean, it could be protein, meat. It could be what Chad's doing. It could be any number of, Rubbermaid or whatever it might happen to be. We take a lot of that expertise that we get and that we see out in the field, whether it's in the retail area, in the manufacturing area, wherever it might happen to be. We accumulate all that expertise and we try to take that expertise to our customers. And so we can propose some things that they may never even think about. Or through design, we can do some tweaking in design that may nest things together as opposed to have them moving all over and prevent a whole step in the operation. There's just a whole myriad of things. We tend to be experts in the transportation area because in our business, we never wait out a trailer. So we ship air a lot, all right? And so transportation's a big expense for us. Well, can be for our customers too, but we can help them there. So those are the things we do.
Very good.
Okay?
Tom, thank you again for being here today.
Thank you.
It's now time for a 10-minute break.
Oh, the places you will go. You'll be on your way up. You'll be seeing great heights. You'll join the high flyers who soar to high heights. You won't be behind because you'll have all the speed. You'll pass the whole gang, and you'll soon take the lead. Wherever you fly, you'll be the best of the best. Wherever you go, you will top all the rest. Except when you don't, because sometimes you won't. I'm sorry to say so, but sadly it's true that bang-ups and hang-ups can happen to you. You can get all hung up in a prickly perch, and your gang will fly on. You'll be left in a lurch. You'll come down from the lurch with an unpleasant bump, and the chances are, then, that you'll be in a slump. And when you're in a slump, you're not in for much fun. Unslumping yourself is not easily done. As you hear the stories of our next speaker that he will share with us, you will understand why Dr. Seuss's Oh, the Places You'll Go is his favorite book. Pat Finley is one of my very special friends. I have known Pat for many years, and we have worked together on numerous projects. He is a fellow trustee of the Morgan Foundation, an organization that provides grants for entrepreneurship and preserving the free enterprise system. Pat has been an invaluable partner as he unselfishly assists me in executing my responsibilities as chairman of the board. Our friendship is truly generational. His father, Tom Finley, who is here today, and many of you know him, is also a very good friend of mine. A friendship that has developed over the years when Tom provided consulting services to Siemens Corporation. Pat is a consummate and creative entrepreneur. In his college years at the University of Akron, he purchased and managed several rental properties as a means to fund his tuition. At the age of 18, he became the youngest person ever to receive a Series 7 stockbroker's license from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. These early experiences became the foundation blocks for an 38-year career in real estate. Pat has been the principal in more than $4 billion of real estate ventures. Pat and I both have a love for aviation. However, where I simply manage aircraft and pilots, Pat is both a jet pilot and a helicopter pilot. Pat will share many success stories about his life and career. But as Dr. Seuss so profoundly presents, sadly it's true that bang-ups and hang-ups can happen to you. You can get all hung up in a prickly perch. Pat has had more than his fair share of prickly perches, including a scary perch while flying a helicopter one day. For most of us, many of these unexpected bang-ups and hang-ups would make us feel like our lives were spinning out of control. But Pat Finley faced these experiences with courage, creativity, and persistence. As you will hear, he always found a way to spin into control. A few years back, because of these many experiences, Pat was motivated to write a book, which he called, appropriately, Spinning into Control. This book not only highlights his own personal and business bang-ups and hang-ups, but also the stories of others who Pat personally interviewed. These were everyday people who suddenly faced life-altering challenges, but they found a way to spin back into control. I would encourage all of you to read his very inspirational book. Before I invite Pat up to the stage, I would like to share one of my favorite stories about Pat. For his 50th birthday in 2014, Pat committed to train for and to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, Africa's tallest peak at 19,341 feet. This is a training process that will take nearly a year. Pat invited his 21-year-old son, Chase, to accompany him. But Chase was involved in a band at the time and chose not to accept the invitation. Perhaps a convenient excuse. When Pat lamented this fact to his father, who was about to be 79, Tom did not miss a beat. He said he would happily and enthusiastically take Chase's place. Then this obviously made Pat very happy, particularly since his climb was scheduled to summit not only on his 50th birthday, but also on Father's Day. Then one afternoon, Pat got a call from his dad requesting a lunch appointment. Pat was certain that his dad was going to tell him he had changed his mind and wanted to back out. While they were eating their lunch, his dad said, "Pat, I know you're susceptible to altitude sickness. So if you find yourself too sick to finish the climb, will it be all right if I go up without you?" Well, both Tom and Pat summited Mount Kilimanjaro together on Father's Day in June of 2014, on Pat's 50th birthday. And at the age of 79, Pat's father became the oldest North American to summit the peak. Please give a warm welcome to my very special friend, Pat Finley.
Well, hello. It's an honor to be here, and note the careful choice of words. You'll know what I mean in a minute. So, we do have something in common. Let me back that up a little bit. I want to say thank you also to Dick for that introduction. Dick, thank you very much. Dick knows me well enough to know that that's my favorite book, and I pick a children's book because I can really relate to that and I can understand it. So thank you, Dick. Thanks also to Dan Freeman and Dee Vidia for having confidence in my story. And I have to make an admission here. In fact, it's quite ironic what I'm about to say. Dick describes that I climbed the tallest freestanding mountain in the world. And I also have scuba dived with sharks. And I can also fly jet airplanes upside down and on fire in training and not be afraid. Yet, being up here in front of you right now scares the bejeebers out of me, I'll admit that. So perhaps some of you have speaker anxiety as well. So please bear with me. But besides speaker anxiety, we do also have something in common. Wayne County. Even though I left Wayne County 40 years ago, the imprint on my psyche, my values, my personal culture, my grounding, it's right here, still in Wayne County. Both my grandparents and my parents are from Wooster. In fact, I clearly remember, if many of you know, Wooster College golf course, tee number 1 actually sits up really high, if that's the right one, closer to University Avenue. And I remember as a kid riding down that in my sled and into the backyard of my grandma's house at 825 East University Street, over by the powerhouse, the old smokestack. Some of you remember that smokestack. So, fond memories of Wayne County. My father was a teacher and a principal at Doylestown Middle School. And in fact, Dad, raise your hand so everybody can see you. And there's more about this guy. My mother was an ER nurse at Wadsworth Whitman Hospital. And later, my father worked and retired with Stan Galt at Rubbermaid. In fact, I remember going in to Rubbermaid on Saturday mornings and having conversations with Stan Galt. Very, very lucky. And I had and I have the pleasure of being with Dick Seaman and then Stan Galt on the board of Morgan Foundation. These incredible influences have helped lead me to where I am today. So, I'm the fourth speaker, I believe, and the bar is open. So, dangerous territory that I'm in. But I'm going to work you a little bit here. I want you to use your imagination. So, as a matter of fact, this is going to be a little interactive. Might be easier to close your eyes and imagine that you're with me on this ride. In fact, it's in a helicopter. You're with me and two other people. It's a beautiful day, and we're coming in for a landing on a grass pad right beside an office building in Columbus, Ohio. We're just above treetop level on final approach. Everything is perfectly fine until the helicopter begins to spin violently. Our bodies slam against the side windows. The G-force is absolutely incredible. The controls practically rip out of my hands. I desperately try to keep the grip, but clearly I'm no longer in control of this spinning helicopter. So let me weave in a backstory while we spin and while the G-force blurs our vision. It's 2010. You and I have known each other and have worked together for years. The recession that hit everyone in the past 2 years has taken its toll on our real estate holdings. It was over $100 million. Now it's next to nothing. You watched me go through a painful divorce during this very, very same time, which added insult to injury. And despite all of this, you still climbed in that helicopter with me to go look at properties. Somehow, through it all, you still trusted me. But believe me, that trust was being fully tested today. So again, back in the spinning helicopter, the G-force slamming you against the edge of the helicopter, we're spinning. The adrenaline rush is so intense, it feels like a basketball is lodged in our throats. There's no breath, there's no air. In my foggy vision, I see the altitude dropping hastily. My friend, I don't think we're going to make it out of this. I think we're spinning to our certain deaths. I'm quickly just succumbing to panic. The uncontrolled spinning of our descent is somewhat mesmerizing, though. Its pending end, somewhat seductive. For a few surreal seconds, it feels like I should just give up and let the dreamlike ride take us where it wants, down, down, and death. Thankfully, that momentary passiveness is shattered by the snap realization that, you know what, if I don't do something about it, we really are going to die. But I've worked too hard in recent years, repairing my fractured life, fighting to stand by my family and my business partners to allow it all to get destroyed today. We aren't going down without everything I have in me to bring us to survival. I'm in charge. I'm responsible. In this snap realization, I do take extreme ownership. Now we're only seconds to inevitable impact. It's time to act now. I slam the stick forward and downward, blasting us towards the highway ramp below. I choose to trade precious time in order to regain a little bit of control. The slanted concrete below is coming up very fast. And look, I truly believe we're not going to make it out in one piece. Only a split second remains. We all, in the helicopter, brace for impact. Just barely escaping the downwash, I pull back like you would the reins of a runaway horse, and I heave the helicopter back. It responds, finally. Our swirling nosedive transitions into a flat, stymied descent. The faded white lines on the highway come into frighteningly detailed focus, and bang, we're on the ground. We're alive. More importantly, everybody is okay. The helicopter blades are waving like noodles. The engine is whining in distress. But we all survived. Now, the helicopter and my ego totaled. But there were some questions in my mind, some major questions. Why did I survive? Was it divine intervention? Was it just dumb luck? I needed to know why. I didn't just want to know why, I needed to know why. You see, this helicopter for me was a trigger. And I had an undying curiosity to find out why, perhaps how I was able to survive, and whether or not it held any meaning in my life going forward. This was an obsession that was a start of a massive transformation in me. In pursuing these questions, I saw a radical transformation around me. In my relationships, in the way I approached my work, everything. There was something I figured out through this incredible journey, and I want to share it with you today. It's a code. But before I share the code, I think you need to know a little bit more about me before. You see, in modern day, I'm a real estate developer. It's been 39 years. Add a year onto that 38 years. Time goes fast. Hotels, apartments, retail, industrial, and multi-states. And a short time ago, I decided to sell it all. I had worked so hard. Why would I sell it all? Well, here's why. About 4 years ago, we opened the doors to our first Vitalia. Vitalia means full of life. Vitalia is a lifestyle living community that is independent living with a very boutique componentry of assisted living and memory care. It's a full-service independent living, but that small componentry is also very important for the continuum. 80% of our vibrant residents will live with us the rest of their lives. This is something that we take very, very seriously, and you'll see. Our portfolio of over 16 newly built communities and another 10 in the pipeline, totaling over $1 billion and spanning the Great Lakes corridor from Michigan to Toledo to Northeast Ohio and over into New York and Western Pennsylvania, is in full force. We also have a program called the Vitalia Scholars Program, where we have over 100 students going back to college. They're over 70 years old. Can you believe that? And guess what? Tuition is on us. Our communities mimic the high school and the college experience, and that's what our beloved elders do deserve. You see, this is an altruistic business with a great social purpose, but it also packs a great business model to support and sustain that altruistic business. And it also has in the markets that we're in, the very select markets that we're in with high barriers to entry, have very, very little competition. So thanks to Dick Seaman's book, A Vibrant Vision, this business, for me and for my partner Mario, wave your hands there, this is a multi-generational family business in a very short period of time. So that's perhaps a success story that perhaps Dan Freeman asked me to be here to discuss with you today, and that's what you're accustomed to hearing. But guess what? It's not the whole story. You guys want to hear the whole story? Okay. You see, I was an underdog of epic proportions from very young, a position that actually ended up suiting me pretty well as an entrepreneur. I grew up on a family farm in Doylestown, always struggling with schoolwork and too busy working to care or be aware of the consequences. 25 frustrating and mysterious years later, I discovered I had severe ADD and a severe learning and reading disability, something I struggle with to this day. I was significantly overweight. In fact, you know me now as Pat Finley, but when I was a kid, I was referred to as Fat Finley. But I wasn't the only, I'm sure I wasn't the only one who had unwelcomed humility training as a kid. So I'm with you on that. I ended up attending 7 different schools before attempting college. And in fact, in high school, I was called to my counselor's office, Mr. Johnston at Doylestown High School. We had just finished the aptitude and hand-eye skills testing, and Mr. Johnston was excited I had a bright future. His idea of a bright future for me was a piece worker in a factory. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not the vision that I had for myself. I knew I had to get to work. I probably could have been also voted least likely to succeed. In fact, when I took the ACT exam to get into college, I was in the lowest quartile, a meager 16. So therefore, University of Akron had to take me in under academic probation. There were no dorms for academic slugs like me, but I knew I had to be close to school if I had a chance of catching up to the minimum standards for survival. I was working 2 jobs and scheduled for full-time business classes while paying tuition to find a place to live. There was just no time for commuting. This presented a serious logistical and financial problem. I needed a better place, a better paying job, or jobs actually, and a place to live at campus. This predicament put me clearly into survival mode. On the side, to make extra money, as Dick mentioned, I studied to be a stockbroker and took the Series 7 Securities Exchange Commission exam on my 18th birthday, becoming the youngest ever to be licensed, and that record still stands to this day. I maxed out my credit cards and took a loan on my car to buy an old beat-up house close to college. That old beat-up house I haphazardly remodeled for 11 other students and, of course, me. That allowed me to double down and study to get myself through school. I was so proud of that house and what it symbolized. In fact, one of my mentors, this was a stern but respected uncle of mine, Uncle Bob, came to visit to see what I had just purchased. And I was sure that he would be very, very impressed. As he drove up and he looked out, I could see the awe in his eyes. I couldn't wait for his praise for this creation to be. It was kind of a mess, I have to admit. He said, "You've just made the biggest mistake of your life." Now that could have crushed my spirit, but I had heard disparaging remarks before. This was motivational. In fact, my new vision was to prove him wrong. Before I knew it, I had a student rental house, 11 paying customers, a place to live, to double down and catch up, and I enjoyed that bonus of a pleasantly surprised, formerly doubting Uncle Bob. Truly a victory for me. The survival plan was clearly in place, at least I thought it was. I went to the library at 6 a.m. to classes, worked as a bank teller. I worked on the docks at a local retail store in the evening, and I sold securities on the side while managed my new real estate venture. My hours were 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., 7 days a week. My new portfolio grew to 50 new rental units, or 50 rental units at the end of college while completing my finance degree, with mostly A's. What followed was an abundant 25-year career in hotels, offices, apartments, land development, and over $4 billion in real estate deals as a principal. In my free time, I became a pilot, both fixed wing and eventually jet airplanes and helicopters. I had 2 great boys, Chase and Logan, and oh yes, forgot to mention, a very, very unhappy wife. More about that in a minute. Finally, I enjoyed some superficial financial success, but it didn't come without market risk and personal signatures of over $100 million. You might guess. Enter the Great Recession of 2009 and the Great Divorce, took 3 years, of 2009. And also, this ended up in $52 million in debt and personal judgment liens against me at the time. That was strike 1, strike 2, and guess what? At the same time, that fateful helicopter crash that we just went through together. That was number 3. After the crash, I realized those split seconds of controlled chaos had been like an ultra-condensed version of the struggle to survive in the previous 3 years. Heck, all my life when you consider my school years. Surviving the crash contained the same inflection points, the same decision-making strategies, and the same path to survival. It somehow, strangely, had become second nature. I began to feverishly study the subject of survival. And as Dick mentioned, I interviewed dozens of survivors, prisoners of war, and by the way, much, much horrific than my situation, but I wanted to learn, I wanted to know why. So I interviewed prisoners of war, victims of airline disasters and school shootings, you name it. I interviewed as many as would talk to me to learn. I just had to fully understand why. Much to my surprise, there was a pattern in all survivors. Not a dozen, not 100, but every single survivor had these 5 steps. I write about it in my first book, Spinning into Control. These steps became the roadmap to anything that I embarked upon, both good and not so good. It's actually the culture of our company, believe it or not. The steps are the five steps are our culture in our company. But it's also, again, it's for good initiatives as well. So all these circumstances that require these same steps are the code that I was talking about. I suppose by now you're interested in knowing what that code is. You want to know? Ready? Okay, here it comes. This is actually a 200-page book boiled down into just a few minutes here. So I'm going to give you the hyper-simplified version of what's called the REACH protocol. So just remember that word, REACH. It's an acronym, R-E-A-C-H. So what does the R stand for? Responsibility. So simple word, but not so simple to execute when it comes to survival or when it comes to any initiative. This is taking extreme ownership of your own situation and your own destiny. Uncle Bob, he was deciding my destiny for me. I took extreme ownership to prove him wrong. We all do this every single day. The helicopter, there was a lot going wrong. I could have just let it go, and I wouldn't be here today. But I decided to take extreme ownership and responsibility to reach back into my mind, my training, and try to save us. And it worked. What's the second letter of the REACH protocol? Evaluation. Every survivor goes through a period of taking extreme ownership and then full evaluation. What's really important about this is where your mentors come in. When you're in trouble or when you've got an initiative that you have that's very important, most of us can't do it alone. Some of us have to, but in most cases, this is where mentors come in and are very, very important. Again, the evaluation in the crash, before the crash, was split seconds. The evaluation and the use of my mentors during the Great Divorce of 2009 and the Great Recession of 2009 was definitely use of mentors and strategizing. So the A, again, sounds really simple. Too simple, you might not take it seriously. Please, believe me, every survivor does this. It's really hard sometimes for people to go through that evaluation stage and then move into the action. This is go time. So many of you strategize. You've heard the cliche, analysis paralysis, and it's difficult to go on. It's time to act and act now and move ahead. But if you're going to act, you also need something called confidence. The confidence is extremely important because when you have naysayers telling you can't do it, you need to stick to your plan. You've taken extreme ownership. You've analyzed. You've evaluated. Now you've chosen to act. Act with confidence. If you don't, you're going to get held back. And then finally, my favorite of all of them, the H, happiness. No, it's not what you think. It's not the happiness that you have survived. Much, much more important and intricate. Much more important and intricate. This is the use of the happiness hormones that's super important. That you know, like the serotonin, the oxytocin, the dopamine rush that you get when you're just one step closer to survival. That's extremely important. Every single survivor that I studied, that I interviewed, contained that. I challenge you to look at any of your survival stories, your initiatives, that you didn't go through these 5 steps. It's also really important to understand that if you miss a step, failure is highly probable. So take it very seriously and go through your own initiatives and see yourself going through these 5 steps. It's also important to understand that looping these 5 steps is super important. You don't just go through them sequentially. You go through them over and over again. Sometimes I do it 100 times a day. Could be more than that. It becomes habit, it becomes second nature. And when you see a situation that's requiring one of the steps, you'll be able to identify it. It'll become indelible in your mind. So thank God, my story didn't end in pieces on that highway ramp in Columbus, Ohio. I had a second chance to not just be alive, but to passionately pursue making this gift of a new life meaningful, purposeful, impactful, and altruistically fulfilling. Thus, the creation of Vitalia, full of life. Vitalia has made an impact, over $500 million in economic impact to our local economy, 650 new jobs, and oh yes, most importantly, nearly 2,000 happy and healthier residents. And most of them, a lot of them, college students, believe it or not, all in about 4 years and growing. So finally, this is a nugget that I want you to take home. Being in this business of age-targeted communities and having a near-death and near-bankrupt experience, I tend to be hyper-focused on the nuances of what's truly important in life. I don't profess to know it all, but I have observed a common trait that all of our residents have. You want to know what that is? Every one of our residents are making up for lost time. What is it that they are making up for lost time? They're making up for lost time to reconnect with their families, their friends, and to make new friends. You know, you see, they may be in the last chapter of their lives, and hopefully one of the best chapters of their lives, and they're making up for lost time. And that's an extremely important thing to understand. This reconnecting, this connecting, is also the H in the REACH protocol. It energizes us. It propels us. So that's where I know that you and I have something in common again. And that is that we can all do better on connections. We're all underdogs. We're all underachievers when it comes to connections. We can all do better. So this is probably not what you expected today in an economic forum. If you take one thing away today, I hope that you pick up the phone, you knock on that door, you embrace and you maximize your connections, and that you utilize your newfound REACH protocol, and especially the H in the REACH protocol, the happiness. So I'll leave you with that, with one thing. I'm going to ask you to use your imagination one more time. You're 100 years old, and I do believe, based on studies, I study this stuff, that you'll make it to 100 and beyond. Statistically, it's true. My father says he's going to make it to 100, and anything after that's a bonus. Imagine yourself as 100, looking back. Have you maximized your connections? So I'll leave you with that challenge. From the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for listening.
Pat, thank you for your story and your insights, and we do have some questions. The first one goes back to your statement of, from your self-described underdog perspective. What would you say are the most important success attributes?
Well, you're not going to be surprised by this one. Never underestimate an underdog. And we all are underdogs at times, so don't underestimate yourself. The difference between underdogs and people that in mainstream that we think are going to be successful really is the adaptability and the creativity that goes into it, and also the passion. Also, it's extremely important to know yourself. Understand your values, your strengths, and what intrinsically motivates you. I talked about mentors. Mentors are unbelievably important for you to get through any initiative, anything that you're doing. Some of us have good use of mentors, and some of us struggle because we don't want to bother people. We feel like we're putting them out to use them as mentors. I know from being a mentor, I love being a mentor to the people that are in our business and many others. I know that it's an honor to actually be a mentor. So please don't forget to do that as much as you possibly can. I also think humility is extremely important in any endeavor, and what comes along with that is appreciation. Appreciation is back to the H again. You know, that's one of the biggest energizers is appreciation. We forget about that. It's too simple, and we just let it go. But it's super, super important to appreciate and think about the things you appreciate every minute of the day. And then also clearly know what I call your preferred future. Be locked into a plan, be locked into your vision of where you're going, and don't let anything hold you back.
Very good, thank you. After your venture into student housing as a college student, do you remember your first commercial real estate deal after that? How old were you? How did you put it together? How long did it take? I
was about 19, and I always thought it'd be cool to own a medical building, or own an office building. So I bought the old Stowe Medical Building on Route 59, and also at the same time an apartment building in Shaker Square. So it's the first time I had been in that kind of business, and I had to learn a lot, but it was a very successful venture. Okay, on the day of your helicopter incident, at the end of the day, the dust is settled, you're at home, you've had a chance to relax. What were your thoughts and emotions when you had the chance to unwind at the end of that day? Let me back that up. When it first happened, the only emotion, so you're in the stage, we've all been there in times that are out of control, and something has just happened, your adrenaline is flowing, and so I was not rational, and I was absolutely, unbelievably pissed off at myself for getting myself into those three things. I didn't think I could learn to not get myself in those situations, which was one of the reasons why I passionately pursued the why. Why did I survive? Why did other people survive? And I could not believe that there was this pattern that really had not been discovered or articulated before. So. Okay. We have time for one last question and then a 10-minute break, right? 5-minute break. Okay. Your first book, Spinning into Control, was highlighted here during your talk and presentation. Do you think there will be a second book? Well, there already is. So I've written and just recently published a children's book. You probably noticed I have an affinity for children's books. So the children's book is The Chaotic Crow, and The Chaotic Crow really is a survival, it's about transitions. And we use Vitalia as a backdrop, and we use Grandma Ellie, happens to be my mother's name, Grandma Ellie and little Logan, her grandson, happens to be my son's name. And in the story, they're both going through transitions together. So essentially, it's a survival story in disguise. The message for adults and children is you're always going to be going through transitions. You might as well become a master at it. And that's survival, and that's the 5 steps. And so we have the stories of transitions throughout the experiences from our residents and Grandma Ellie and Logan. And that one was a lot of fun. Okay, Pat, thank you for your time you've spent with us and your message. And from here, we'll take a 5-minute break. Thank you.
Folks, Kerry Jaros has been with Gojo Industries for 8 years and has led the company as president and CEO since January 2020. Every day, she passionately pursues Gojo's purpose, saving lives and making life better through well-being solutions. She focuses on extending Gojo's leadership as a growth-oriented company that cares about the health and well-being of people, both out in the world and within its own walls. Kerry earned a BA in public policy from Brown University and an MBA from Harvard. She then spent the first 12 years of her career as a management consultant at Bain & Company before moving back to Northeast Ohio. During her consulting years, she estimates she worked with more than 50 companies in Boston, London, Amsterdam, and probably other cities. It was a desire to live closer to family, though, that brought Kerry, a Shaker Heights native, back to Cleveland. After her return, she joined Dealer Tire, where she led strategy and finance and was a general manager with profit and loss responsibility. In 2014, Carrie was named president of Walnut Ridge Strategic Management Company, a family office of the Canfer family, which owns Gojo. From there, she began her relationship with Gojo as a board member. In 2016, Carrie joined Gojo full-time to lead innovation, marketing, and enterprise strategy, and shortly thereafter was promoted to Chief Operating Officer, before being promoted to President and CEO in January 2020. Carrie's first 2 years leading Gojo were a wild ride. As a maker of Purell hand sanitizer, Gojo was thrust onto the national stage early in the pandemic when demand for its critical products reached near infinite levels. During 2020, Carrie and her team led Gojo's efforts to deliver 140 billion doses of Purell worldwide. They did this by creatively sourcing raw materials and components, tripling the number of U.S. manufacturing and distribution facilities, and investing more than $400 million in capacity expansion and vertical integration. Simultaneously, Team Gojo kept its innovation pipeline roaring and kept preparing its ecosystem for the future. The efforts helped the third-generation family firm with a 75-year track record to reaffirm its position as market leader in away-from-home skincare and to position itself for future growth. According to Executive Chair of Gojo, Marcella Canfer-Rolnick, Carrie has a rare combination of high-level conceptual business acumen and the capability to translate that into applied strategy. Marcella said when they first met, we knew immediately that we wanted to work together. Carrie remembers the moment vividly when she had to make her first bold decision in January 2020, as the world was figuring out what to do with the COVID-19 virus. She and her colleagues were sitting in a room at Gojo in Akron, and she had been on the job for less than 2 weeks as the new president and CEO. She recalled her predecessor's words, "You may think you're ready, but you don't know what it's like until you're actually in the seat." The question was, do we turn on our capacity 24/7 and start making stuff not knowing what's going to happen? We had to make the decision before the virus had even come to the US, she said. I remember everyone was sort of turning to me, and I was like, why are you all looking at me? Then I realized, okay, I actually have to make the call. Carrie and the Gojo team decided to ramp up their production, and it paid off. Carrie continues to serve on the Gojo board and is on the boards of Stowe, Ohio-based ACRT Services and publicly traded grocery outlet. She's an angel investor in several firms and an advisory board member of a startup called AntFlow. She's vice chair of the board of trustees of Laurel School, a trustee of the Kelvin and Eleanor Smith Foundation, a board member of the Akron Children's Hospital Foundation, and of the Boys and Girls Club of Northeast Ohio. She and her husband, Brett, have 3 daughters. When I was at Dealer Tire, Carrie said, my older daughter always said she wanted to sell tires. Now, all 3 of my girls want to work at Gojo. Ladies and gentlemen, Carrie Jaros.
Thank you, Dee. That was wonderful. I always say, please, no long introduction, and you'll hear a little bit more about Gojo and our humility, our distaste for the spotlight. But we also have learned how to be in it, I think, over the last couple of years, and we're trying to practice feeling a little more comfortable with that. So thank you for that lovely introduction. It is such an honor to be here today. I will talk about how important Wooster is to us. It has really become a crown jewel, the crown jewel. I'm allowed to say that when I'm here. When I'm at the other plants, I can't say that. But when I'm here, I can say it is really the crown jewel in our supply chain and the Wooster community, and all the people who live here and have worked with us over these last years really made the difference. And I'm so proud of who we are and what we do in this community, and so grateful that I can spend a little bit of time with you here today. So I refuse to wear the headphone mic, so if you can't hear me, wave, and I'll get myself back in the middle. We're gonna start out talking about living our purpose, and I'm gonna figure out how to make this work on here, so give me a second. I thought I was in great shape, and now it doesn't appear to be advancing. We also are all about learning, and so it's gonna be fine. There we go. All right, so a little bit about us as a company, as background, and many of you may know us well, so you can tune out or check your phone, but I'll just do a little bit of background. So we are a third-generation family enterprise. We are the inventors of Purell hand sanitizer. 1988 is when we invented Purell. We're the largest away-from-home soap maker in the US. So many people think of us as a consumer sanitizer company, and today that's more true than it ever was. But before the pandemic, our business was about 2/3 soap and only about 10% consumer. So most of what we did, and I say we because there's like a crew of us right in the middle of the room here, most of what we did before the pandemic was actually make soap that went into sanitary sealed refills, that went into the dispensers that you see all over the world. Some of them say Gojo, some of them say Pravan in hospitals, some old ones say Micrel maybe in restaurants, and a lot of them today actually say Purell that are soap dispensers too. So that was about 2/3 of our business before the pandemic. 90% of what we did was B2B, so the rest of that B2B business was sanitizer, and much of it was in hospitals. And we have always really used science-based innovation to drive our business, and I'll talk more about that later today. Just some other little stats about us. So we're actually a women-owned business, a WBE certified women-owned business. We're one of the biggest women-owned businesses in the country. And it's been really interesting over the last couple of years as more and more large businesses have supplier diversity goals that they're trying to obtain. Having us be a women-owned business in a category that's actually a decent-sized spend category has been really helpful for us from a commercial point of view, and we also feel great about it. We also do a lot of work around sustainable value, so we have many products that are cradle-to-cradle certified. We go through lots of other processes to get third parties to validate our products, and we also win awards for things like being an ethical corporation and being really values-based, and we'll talk about that too. But we always at Gojo start with our purpose, and if you ask any team member anywhere, you sort of stop them when they're doing whatever they're doing and say, what's our Gojo purpose? They can tell you that it's saving lives and making life better through well-being solutions. This is at the heart of everything we do, and there were dozens and dozens of moments during the pandemic when we actually used our purpose to help us make real-life decisions every day. And I think that's a purpose that works. You can have a purpose that goes up on the wall that you never really refer back to. I don't think that's powerful. I think what's so powerful is having a purpose that actually helps you make decisions, it guides you, and our purpose does that for us. I remember at one point during the pandemic, I was at our Lippman campus facility in Cuyahoga Falls on a Saturday serving lunch to the team members who were working around the clock. And they pulled me aside and said, hey, this one supervisor has worked 21 days straight. We just thought you'd want to say hi to her, and recognize her. I said, yeah, I'd love to. So they grabbed her off the line, and she came over, and I said, I hear you've worked 21 days straight. Did we ask you to do that? That seems really unreasonable. And you have to remember, this is at a time when most humans around the world were actually at their houses for 21 days straight. People weren't even getting up to go to work, and this woman had come in 21 days straight. I said, how did you do this? And she said, well, no one else could do it. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, we staffed up. We went to 3 shifts, 7 days a week, and we just didn't have enough production supervisors, so we couldn't run, so I just did it. And I said, well, how do you keep going? You must be exhausted working 21 days straight, long shifts. And she said, well, our purpose gets me, I could work 210 days straight with this purpose. We're doing something that matters. And I thought, oh my gosh, I look so silly. Like, this woman I'm the CEO, and she's telling me that our purpose is actually what gets her up and motivates her every day. It was such a powerful moment. But I'm going to talk a little bit about innovation because it's sort of the lifeblood, and one of the things I'm most proud of is that even during our pandemic response, which I'll spend most of my time on, we really kept our innovation engine roaring. And for the Wooster crowd in particular, I'm going to focus you in on some of the hand sanitizer on here. So you can see that in 1988, back in the sort of lower left side, we launched hand sanitizer. We actually brought that product to market in less than a year. So we had a food service customer who came to us. We were a soap maker primarily at the time. And the food service customer came to us and said, I need a way for people to clean their hands when they're working in my fast food environment, but they're not near a sink. What can you do? And we said, well, that's not really what we do. We have this other product that's called DermaPro that's actually like an isopropyl alcohol rub that we have for hospitals in case of emergency, in case their water goes out. So you could use that. And they said, no, 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 no. My wife is a nurse, and she knows that stuff. It's terrible. You've got to come up with something better. And so we sort of went away, and we had a guy who had worked at Edge Shaving Gel who understood how to make things gel-like. And so within a year, we had developed a formula and launched it. And unfortunately, when we were ready, we showed back up to this food service provider and said, hey, we're ready. We've got this product that you asked for. And he said, no, no, our budgets have been cut. I don't need it anymore. So we said, okay, well, we've got this great product. So Joe Camphor, who many of you know, thought it was so wonderful, this product, and he said, we're going to figure out how to sell this. So he started putting it on the plans of our sellers, and every year they would miss the plan. They'd sell zero, and he would put it on. And there's a famous Gojo story where he was sitting across the table with our head of sales, this guy Ron Rudin, and Ron had this huge mustache. And he was sitting at the table with Joe, and he got so angry at Joe for putting this Purell on his sales plan again in a way that there was no way he was going to achieve his bonus, that he came across the table, and Joe said he could feel the mustache hitting him in the face, while Ron was sort of yelling at him. But we stuck with it 7 years, and in that 7th year after we launched Purell, we figured out that actually healthcare was really the place for it. We got the first Purell on the wall in hospitals, and the rest is sort of history. So you see Purell there, but you also see some really interesting things in the upper right. So in 2017, we had this insight that the Purell brand was really starting to be stronger than ever, and at the same time, there were a bunch of things going in our industry and in the world that suggested that it was going to be really important that we have end users, whether they were restaurants or colleges or hospitals. We wanted them to demand the product rather than just relying on distribution to push the product. And we thought with the Purell brand, we actually have a chance at that because it's a really powerful brand and we can tell our story directly. And so in 2017, we launched the Purell solution. It was our first soap and sanitizer co-branded Purell. You see them in those really cool dispensers, which are even better than they look. So yes, they're beautiful, very beautiful. But in addition, they have a couple features. So the first feature is that the top is clear. We call it an at-a-glance refill. We used to call them exposed refills, but it seemed a little spicy, so now we call them at-a-glance refills. And you can tell your daughter when she's wearing a shirt you don't like that it's an at-a-glance shirt, So we have these at-a-glance refills which allow you to see when the dispenser needs to be serviced. Now that was smart in 2017. Let me tell you that today, in a world where there's not enough labor anywhere, we just installed 66,000 dispensers at the Cleveland Clinic across all their sites. Imagine trying to service 66,000 dispensers if you had to look inside every one and see if it needed the refill changed. You can walk into a restroom that has 20 dispensers, open the door, stick your head in, and see if you need to change a refill. So that's turned out to be a really, really important innovation, and it's something that we have patented. The other thing that I think is even more interesting is those dispensers have what we call energy on the refill. So that every refill comes with its own coin cell battery, which is enough power to dispense the entire refill. What that means is you have a touch-free dispenser that doesn't need its batteries changed. So go back to the 66,000 dispensers at the Cleveland Clinic. Those are all getting hit a different amount at different times. If you had to maintain that fleet of dispensers and keep all the batteries fresh, you would actually need full-time employees to do that. And so this innovation, paired with this innovation around at a glance, is really, really a tremendous wedge from a market point of view today at this time when we're worrying so much about workflow and labor. And the benefit from a purpose point of view is our dispensers work. They have product in them, they work when you put your hand underneath, and that means to us more lives saved and made better. So innovation is the lifeblood of what we do. Our pipeline is actually fuller than it's ever been. So we have more launches planned in 23, 24, and 25 than we've had in any three-year period probably in the company's history. And that's because we kept this going the whole time that we were dealing with the pandemic. So let me skip forward and talk a little bit about the pandemic. All right. So raise your hand if you've heard the acronym VUCA. I agree it's not as cool as REACH, and I don't have a helicopter story, but I'm gonna do my best. So VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Now that sure feels like right now, yeah? What's interesting is this term was actually coined in the 80s, and it became really popular in 1988. The Army War College adopted this concept, though they didn't create it. They sort of adopted this concept to help them make sense of a post-USSR world. So the idea was all of a sudden, it used to be that we had this really clear one sort of force that we had to contend with, and post-USSR, sort of the fall of communism in parts of the world, things got a lot more complicated. And so they talked a lot about VUCA and how do you have to adapt in a VUCA world? What's it like? What's so funny is you see this term and you talk about, even leading up to the pandemic, people were sort of resurrecting VUCA to say, man, this feels more like our world today. And we all went through a crazy time. I actually there's a Belgian futurist who sort of updated this thinking, and his name is Peter Hinson. We actually brought him many years ago to come speak to us at Gojo before the pandemic. We were very prescient. And he now has been out in the world talking about what he calls the never normal. So, over the last couple of years, everybody keeps telling us the new normal is coming. This is what the new normal is going to be like. People aren't going to work in offices. They are going to work in offices. They aren't going to wash their hands. They are going to wash their hands. Everybody has predictions about the new normal. And he says, you're all nuts. Nobody knows. And that's not because people aren't smart and they can't predict the future. It's because the future isn't going to be static. That is over. That time is past. There is no new normal coming that's just the same for year after year after year. The new normal is actually about constant disruption. Things have accelerated so much. These VUCA forces are with us in a way that's just going to continue to create constant disruption. And so who wins in a world that is VUCA are people who actually practice a set of skills that are really different than what it took to win in a world that was static. You think about the static world, many of us actually grew up in that world. You would do annual strategic planning. You might come up with a 5-year plan. You would lay it all out. It would have 1,000 projects. You'd load all those projects into some kind of giant spreadsheet, or you'd draw them on the wall. Everybody would execute their projects. You'd wake up 5 years later and you'd hit your targets and celebrate, right? That is the opposite of what we're all dealing with now. If anybody in this room knows how to set a budget now, please see me after this, because I have been failing miserably at it for 3 years, right? It's really hard to predict now. And so the skills we need to survive in this new world are very different. Peter Hinson actually uses the acronym VACCINE, which is, I find now, a bit trite, but I'll go through it anyway. So he talks about, in that kind of world, needing velocity. You have to move fast. He talks about needing agility. He talks about needing to be creative, innovative. He talks about networking, using your network, and then my favorite, he talks about experimentation. At Gojo, we have had a set of values really for the full 75 years. We forced ourselves to put them down on paper, fortunately, in 2019. The family had sort of argued for years about exactly the right ones and exactly the right order, and there were lots of different, it never felt good enough, But in 2019, Marcella and I said, hey, we really have to document these. We can change them later, but we need to write them down so that when people come into the business, they get to understand these, because we believe that culture is actually the manifestation of values. And so we wrote these down in 2019. We said, hey, there's 5 values, but there's also these things we called guiding principles that for us are the way you behave when you're living into the value. So a great example under always learning. That's a great value to have, but what does it really mean? Well, it means we're hands-on, we try new things, we experiment, and we keep what works, right? What does bold leadership really mean? It means we courageously take on challenges no one else will, and we inspire other people to do the same thing. So we sort of forced ourselves to write this all down, and thank goodness, because they literally were printed on December 31st of 2019, and boy did we need them a couple weeks later. So I'll go very quickly through what happened in the pandemic. We all are sick of it, I'm sure, right? When they asked me to speak about it, I thought, it's a really good story, and I'm so proud of our team, and I think it's part of this area's history. We own this together because of what we all did in Wooster, Ohio, and man, am I sick of talking about it, because we all just want to move on. But I'm going to do it one more time for posterity. So again, feel free to check your phones. You won't hurt my feelings. So Dee talked a little bit about this in the introduction, but imagine it's January 2020. So fortunately, I wasn't new to Gojo. I had been around for a while, and I had people like Ron Hammond, who's sitting there, who had been doing this for longer than I've been alive. Can I? Yeah, that's a dig. That was a dig. It's not true, but I'm gonna hear it later. So I had a bunch of people around who really knew what they were doing, were very experienced, not just in general, but specifically at Gojo. Ron actually came to Gojo right after H1N1, which was our last big surge, and he'll tell you that it was like showing up at a fraternity party on Sunday morning, right? Like, boy, had it been crazy the night before, and he showed up when it was time to clean it all up. So he had a lot of relevant experience, and lots of people around who were like that. But it was a scary time. It was a scary time in January 2020. We have a detect and alert team at Gojo that runs sort of under the surface all the time. It's like a background app on your phone. And it's a group of people who are paying attention to what's going on out in the world that could be relevant for our business. And those things tend to be illnesses anywhere in the world, natural disasters cause spikes in our business, cold and flu seasons. We actually use Australia's cold and flu season as a key predictor for what our cold and flu season will be like in the US. So they pay attention to this stuff and they keep us posted. And in January 2020, I came back to work on January 4th. It was a year when the Monday was the 4th. And I already had a message from our detect and alert team. And they said, there's something going on in China. Doesn't seem like it's a big deal yet, but it's gaining a little bit of traction. We're getting more noise, and we're gonna pay really close attention to it. Don't do anything yet, but we should all know it's there. By February, so really 4 weeks later, you can see the headlines in the paper, right? So within a month, you had Florida at the epicenter, you had San Francisco Chronicle stay-at-home orders. It was crazy. It was crazy. And I remember the meeting that Dee talked about was in February, like around February 7th or 8th, when we were sitting in that room and we had to make the call. It wasn't even in the US yet on February 7th or 8th. We had heard it was in Italy, but orders were starting to increase in anticipation. And we said, we know from past experience that if that happens and we're behind, we will never, ever catch up. And I remember in that meeting everybody was saying, we should do this. And I said, so what happens if we do it and we're wrong? And probably Ron, somebody said, we will be buried alive in hand sanitizer. And at the time, I thought, that sounds terrible. Within a few weeks, there's nothing I wanted more on this planet than to be buried alive in hand sanitizer. We had, in March, by the time the WHO declared a pandemic, we had one night, our orders went up 10 times, and within 3 weeks, we had 3 years of back orders. SAP, which is finicky in the best of times, did not like having 3 years of back orders. And it really didn't like it when we started going in and trying to create rules about how those orders were treated. It has a very specific way it likes to do things, and we were asking it to do something different, and we essentially broke it. So we broke SAP right in the middle of the craziest ordering we had ever seen in the business's history. And so we did what anybody does when the really expensive software doesn't work. We moved into Excel. So we were running a really big business that was in the middle of the global spotlight on Excel spreadsheets. Everyone had been sent home in the universe, and we were sort of like secretly bringing people into the office into a really big conference room, making them sit essentially like they would be at the corners here, yelling at each other, with masks on, trying to figure out how to work through this thing really as a war room. And it was a wild time. I think all told, I'll show you this video. I'll throw it out to the orchestra. Good job, guys. So, you know, it was the wildest time. That movie actually comes from a movie that we first made for our own team members that we sent out to all of them to thank them. I think that what is even lost on us today, we forget even today what it was like to do this stuff when none of us could see each other. You know, so we had all these team members all over the world, really. We have 3 plants in France, and the folks there did the same thing. And none of us could even look each other in the eye to say thank you. You know, we couldn't have a big hot dog cookout to say thank you. We sent pretzels to people's houses. You know, we always at Gojo have had peanut butter and jelly and milk in the kitchen and popcorn on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we sent popcorn to people at their houses to say thank you because we were so disconnected. I think when you sort of step back and look at that time, it was a really uncomfortable period for us, in addition to the way we were working and how hard it was. This sort of public focus was so strange. Like, I grew up in Shaker, I live in Shaker, I lived a block from my mom and dad at the time. I had to get a security system because people were literally coming to knock on my door asking for Purell. I opened my car at a grocery store, and someone came over and was trying to give me cash to take Purell out of my trunk, right? It was just a strange time. But when I look at what we did as a team, 140 billion doses of Purell just in 2020. We're probably around 200 billion, you know, since then. 2.5 million square feet of facilities that we activated during that time. So we were making, and at the same time, we were investing so that we have capacity, vertical integration, the flexibility and supply security to do this going forward. We had a 300% increase in team members. We were hiring in our products. We hired 500 team members, which isn't on here. We spent $400 million, which is 10 years of CapEx for us. So all that was happening at the same time that these guys were getting up every day trying to figure out, how do I literally get product out the door? I won't even talk about our rack collapse that my friend Sean had to navigate. I mean, it was just the wildest, westest times. In terms of lessons that we learned, I think first, and I've talked about this, the power of our purpose is so much stronger than we knew. I think going into the pandemic, we all thought it was important and we talked about it a lot, but we didn't feel it every day. We didn't feel it every single day. I think the second thing is we have always had this concept of molecular leadership at Gojo. Part of what made it possible for me to step into that role is I never had any concept that I was going to have to do it by myself or that I was expected to know everything. We think about leaders as people who are walking into a room saying to everybody else, the first thing out of our mouth is, what do you guys all think we should do? You know, we have a consensus-based leadership process, and when that doesn't work, it's consultative, and the leader will make the decision, but it's never without input. And I think that idea of us being better together, which is one of our values, really helped. I also think bold leadership is really important. Pat talked a little bit about that in his talk. You do have to have the courage to make decisions. Not acting is often much worse than acting wrongly and fixing it later. But I would say it has to come with humility and a learning mindset. So there's an article, I'll say the name of it at the risk of all of you sending me death threats, but I have a security system now. So there's this article that was published in 2013 in the HBR, Harvard Business Review, and it's one of the most read articles of all times. And it has a really nasty title, but I'll tell you because the insight's good. So the title is, Why Are So Many Incompetent Men Leaders? Okay, it was written by a man. He's actually the chief and innovation officer at Manpower, which is one of the biggest human capital companies in the world. So he wrote this article, and he's being tongue-in-cheek. But the upshot of the article was that competence and confidence are often really hard for us to distinguish between. So when we see confidence as humans, we actually presume competence. And very often, there's no connection. Like, they're not even correlated, right? They're just two different qualities which can coexist, but often they don't coexist. And I actually think what's underneath that is just this idea of being humble enough to be a learner. So you can be confident, but also just always having that curiosity, being open, trying to learn new things and see what's changed and asking lots of questions. Because if you're a bold actor, and I'm very bold, I love to make decisions, right? That is not my problem. So if you're really bold and you love to make decisions, boy, you better constantly be paying attention to make sure that the course that you're setting people on is still the right course, that what you thought was going to happen is happening or that it's working, and being willing to sort of adjust on the fly. And I actually think that that's a different kind of confidence. It takes a lot of confidence and humility, to constantly take in that information, to admit maybe this thing didn't work the way I thought, to solicit input on how should we shift, and that was something that came through over and over again. So I'll close out with some pictures. I want to talk about some of our investments in Wooster, and I want to make sure I get some of the details right. You guys feel free to jump up and correct me. The team who did all this work is here. But I want to show you some of the amazing, amazing things that we did in just right around the corner. So what you're seeing here is WR1 and WR2. These are lines that they were not even a sparkle in our eye in 2019. We had no intention of getting into this business. These are fill lines that are high-speed fill lines for tabletop bottles. So the bottles that you see around here, they were on the table out at reception. Those bottles, we can fill now. These lines were rated to fill 400 of them a minute. Just like close your eyes and imagine 400 bottles a minute. And what's so interesting when you look at that picture is it looks like there's a lot of kind of space behind the fillers. That's the runway. Like, you know the theory that you need a longer runway for a faster plane? That's what's going on here. You need all that space to buffer the product that's coming through that fast. So we can now fill tabletop bottles at a rate that is unprecedented. Nobody else can do this, okay? And so you can see pictures during construction. These are fully operational now. And those really prepare us for surge in the future. Tabletop bottles are the first thing that spike. This is our blow molding. So before the pandemic, the majority of the bottles that we fill, did it not go? That's me. There we go. Thank you. This is blow molding. So before the pandemic, the vast majority of our bottles we bought from the outside. We still buy many bottles from the outside, but we thought it was really important that we be able to blow our own bottles because this is one of the things that becomes a bottleneck really quickly. You might have seen the Dawn dish soap bottles that were filled with Purell. Fortunately, P&G had some extra bottles when we needed them most, and they're a nice Ohio company, and we worked together, but bottles became very scarce. And for our refills that go on the wall, those are not stock. We can't get them anywhere else. They have to be our bottles. And so we now have the ability to blow our own bottles through either single stage, which you're seeing on the left, and two stage, which you're seeing on the right, blow molding. I also want to talk a little bit about our injection molding capabilities. So Gojo Precision Molding, GPM, is our business that does blow molding and injection molding. It's inside Gojo. The injection molding is for all the little pieces and parts, the components that make our pumps. We had gotten into this business. In fact, Stephen came to us through that business. Somebody had asked me, by the way, about Stephen's immigration status before the meeting, so I'm really happy to announce that it is strong to very strong. We're really happy to have him back. Those of you who don't know, Stephen was being held against our will in Ireland for a long time. But he came to us originally with this injection molding business, and so we make all the little pieces and parts that sit inside the pumps that are in our refills for our dispensers. During the pandemic, the thing that was in fact hardest for us to get out of everything were the pumps for our tabletop bottles, and we had never made those. We got all of them on the outside. Germany actually was a source of a lot of those pumps, and the German government at one point shut the border to those pumps because they said it was a national security issue to not have enough hand sanitizer pumps inside Germany, and so they wouldn't export them during the pandemic. So that seemed like a reason to make our own. So we now have this amazing tabletop pump manufacturing, which is making all the components and then assembling them with robots. It's super cool. The best part of it is there's a giant detangler that takes all the little springs that go in those pumps and rattles them around and gets them all to line up. So please come see it if you haven't. And then you see our blending operations on the right side. If you remember nothing else today, remember that we can make 1 billion pounds of Purell a year in Worcester. It's too many things. No, now it's like, okay, there we go. It's on the right. Yeah. Okay. I mean, come on. So we can make 1 billion pounds of Purell a year in that blending, and that's pretty amazing. We're the largest hand sanitizer plant in the world, right here. So I think that stuff's really important, but maybe what's even more important is how the team showed up together during all of that craziness. So you can see our team together, sort of doing all kinds of crazy things. Making a difference is what I do. President of Positive Mojo, and I love my job, right? So these are the people who are behind the scenes. I couldn't be more proud and grateful to have been with them there through that time. And I think we're looking ahead at a world that's VUCA, but we feel like we've got sort of the vaccine components to continue to figure out how to thrive, add value, and deliver on our purpose. So thank you so much for having me.
Gary, thank you for your time, and this is the second time that Gojo's been represented at the forum. It's hard to believe that 2014, Joe was here telling us about how he was making soap and taking windshield wiper handles off of cars in the dump to make the soap. And in May of 2015 is when you signed the lease at the former Rubbermaid facility, now we call it the Gojo Wooster campus. And they are humble because they put over $100 million into Wooster and are one of our lead employers. So thank you so much for the investment. We appreciate it. A question about the local economy. What are the challenges and or advantages in doing business in Wooster? And what can the community do to support your growth here in the community?
So we love being in Worcester. I think the quality of the people, I think the kind of support and just open-hearted embracing of us that we get every single day is spectacular, and it stands out. I know Stephen and the team have lots of personal relationships, are deeply involved in this community, and love being here. The single number one greatest challenge is getting enough people, bar none. That is the challenge. And so anything we can do to get more affordable housing and get more people in town who can work in our plants, we would love that, and we would love to be part of the solution with you.
Excellent. If there are any questions, make sure you get them to Samara. The second question, how has the pandemic affected your business model and brand identity, and how does your team project consumer behavior post the pandemic?
Yeah, so it is a strange time. I think it's a strange time for almost every business. I would say that we have sort of a tale of two worlds right now. So tale of two cities, maybe. One of them is that the Purell brand is stronger than it's ever been. So our recognition is, and trust in Purell is off the charts. 91% of people, when you ask them on the street and you name the brand Purell, trusted is the first word they give you. It's crazy. So we are a very trusted, very well-known brand around the world. Retail is doing very, very well. So I do think that people's behaviors at home, I won't say permanently, but they are still very changed. So today, the retail market for hand sanitizer overall is about 1.4 times what it was in 2019. There was a period in 2020 when there were 14 times sales for 10 weeks in the retail channel. So not only is it at 1.5 times today, there is still a glut of product that sort of went out there that isn't gone. So I think that says volume is still not only strong, but could even be stronger. And Purell is actually 2.5 times what it was in 2019 at retail. So our share hit 42% last week, which is an all-time high at retail. So that side of the business is great. I think what is complicated is that human traffic patterns are really different. So when you think about us as a business that was 2/3 soap, institutional soap before the pandemic, soap is like around 80% of volume today. It's not because we're doing anything wrong, I think our share is in fact stronger in a lot of ways than it was. But there are all kinds of strange factors. Buildings just aren't open as much. The people who are in them aren't there as much. When they're there for shorter periods, so maybe they don't use the restroom, maybe they don't shower at the gym in the ways they do. That has been improving, so it's getting better and better, but it's not getting better like a snap. It's getting better this way. So that will continue. I think it will continue to improve, and we're forecasting absolutely getting back over 100% based on both volume growth and share. But it's been slow. Sanitizer in dispensers is really interesting because the market was flooded with bad solutions. So you saw these like stormtrooper-looking dispensers all over the place. They're Chinese dispensers that are bulk fill, so you just pour stuff in them. The FDA has actually come out aggressively and said, don't do that, it's bad. You don't want to have these dispensers that you're pouring stuff in. The 260 brands of sanitizer were banned because they were poisonous. So they've said stop doing that. The market's starting to adjust, it's working its way out, but it's taking some time. So at the headline level, I would say we anticipate that behavior will stay shifted, that for sure demand will be very strong in the long run, but this period of adjustment has been a little bit dislocating.
Last question, Carrie. Okay. So you've reinvented yourself from a soap company, hand sanitizer, now is chief in charge. Are there any new products or markets that Gojo is looking at? And is there any new dispensers that you're looking at, or ways to dispense Purell in the future?
I can't tell you my secrets. I will say that so I said we have our innovation pipeline for 23, 24, and 25 is chock full. That includes our next generation dispensing platform. I can't tell you much about it, but it will be another step change from even we're the leaders right now, and it's a step change above our best dispenser. Where I would steer you in the near term is some innovation we've launched that's really cool. So on the surfaces side of the world, we launched Purell Surface Spray in 2018. Raise your hand if you've ever tried Purell Surface Spray. Don't lie to me. Okay, not a lot of people. We did not launch it at retail. We thought about it, but the dynamics of retail don't make sense if you're a single brand with a single SKU. And so we decided to build it the same way we built Purell hand sanitizer. Do it sort of as a cult product with a following. And on Amazon and some other platforms, it is doing tremendously well. It is the coolest product. It's a no-rinse, food contact safe spray. You can use it on food surfaces and just let it evaporate and then work on them, so like a cutting board. The only active ingredient is alcohol, which evaporates, so it leaves nothing. You can clean dog bowls, kids' little tray tables, your smelly shoes. It kills the bacteria. It is a miracle product. So I think that surface spray is worth picking up, and Stephen could probably even, give you a deal on your first bottle. That we always, the first one's free. So.
Excellent, Carrie. Thank you so much for your time. Thank your belief and your investment in Wooster. Thank you so much. And folks, to close things out, President of the Chamber of Commerce, Samara Zimmerly, who will have some closing remarks.
So again, on behalf of the Worcester Area Chamber of Commerce, I would like to thank all of our speakers for taking time out of their busy schedules to join us today. Round of applause for them. To all of our sponsors and to each and every one of you in the audience for joining us. We appreciate everything that you do as community leaders and influencers do in assuring that the Worcester area remains a desirable place to live and do business. Let's continue our fellowship for social hour. We are adjourned.